former from Evo, welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Veasan family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Rocco Miller, who does an incredible job over at Bracketeer.org. This man is doing an incredible job of looking at all 365 Division I teams. He's over at Basket Under Review and so much more. And there's a lot of debate as to what's all happening with Miami of Ohio after they suffer their first loss of the season. We're going to be chatting with them about that, the entire bubble picture. We're going to be looking at some teams that might be outside the top 4. And by that, I mean Duke, Arizona, Michigan, and Florida that might be able to wreck the apple cart. Some teams that he feels have a little bit of upside or playing some good basketball. He's out here in lovely Las Vegas as well for the Mountain West tournament. So we're going to chat with him a little bit about that tournament as well. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have 1 or 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, the RCM, they mean does not matter, so per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, we had a great day of college basketball on Thursday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Miami of Ohio, not just a great team straight up in college basketball, 19-10 against the spread, but that came to a little bit of an end at the hands of UMass. The Minutemen, well, they lasted more than a good minute. 87-83 final in this one for UMass. They only go 3 of 15 from three-point range, but the Achilles heel of Miami of Ohio showed up. They lose a rebound battle, 41-24. Miami of Ohio does go 12 of 33 from 3, and they had the lead at the half. They were up by, I believe it was 8 or so points in the second half, but for this UMass team, they got Leonardo Batil be able to step up 25 points, 8 rebounds. For UMass, a team that's been rough at the free throw line, 14 out of 18 at the free throw line, so Miami of Ohio will await their fate on Selection Sunday. For Virginia, they get the job done against NC State. They get a win. They get a cover, 81-74. The final, NC State has been one of your better over teams in all of college basketball this season. For NC State, 21 overs to 12 unders, and for this NC State team, they did their part in terms of hitting threes. They went 11 of 22 from three-point range. Paul McNeil Jr. was able to spy 26 points, but for Virginia, they do a nice job in terms of doing the little things. They go 12 of 25 from 3, but they win the rebound battle by a count of 34-33, and for Virginia, 11 of 14 at the free throw line. They were able to have 9 shot blocks in this game, as well as he had 8 from Ogana and Yesu off the bench, 8 points, 8 blocks, 6 rebounds, and then Malik Thomas, he was able to spy the team with 16 points. Arizona just continues to be as steady as they come, 81-59 final in this one, and Arizona has been one of your top cover teams in the country, 18-13-1 against the spread. Central Florida just went cold this entire Big 12 tournament, 3 of 21 from three-point range in this one. Themis Folks had 14 points, but he had 6 turnovers. For Arizona, they win the turnover battle 11-8. They win the rebound battle 44-36, and they go just 6 of 16 from 3, but they didn't need those threes with Braden Burries stepping up, giving the team 21 points. Montevis Kurivas, 9 points, 10 rebounds, and then Toby Awaka, 12 and 12. 12 points, 12 rebounds. St. John's, they get a nice win and cover against Providence, 85-72 the final, and Providence has been a great over team. If they get invited to the Crown or something like that, they did play a rare under in this game, but for Providence, right now they are a top 3 team in all of college basketball to the over, and this game falls just short of being able to get you an over, but I mean, still, it's been very impressive. 22 overs to 11 unders, and for Providence, they had Stephen Vox be able to spy the team with 23 points. For Providence, they go 5 of 14 from 3, while St. John's is 7 of 27 from 3, but they won the rebound battle 51-30 as you had Zuby Ejiofor, 21 points, 10 boards, and then off the bench, Ian Jackson was able to give the team 14 points. They also, St. John's won the turnover battle 11-9 as well. For Miami, they take down Louisville 78-73 the final, as this Louisville team just has not been the same without Mikal Brown, and they go 6 of 24 from 3 points. Miami is also been a really good over team. Both Miami of Ohio, they cash you another over on Thursday. They're now up to 19 overs at 10 unders thus far this season. And Miami of Florida, 18 overs, 12 unders, and a push. But for Miami of Florida, you had Mr. Malik Renew step up in a big way, 24.6 rebounds, and for Miami. They actually lose the rebound battle 36-33, but win the turnover battle 13-8. As for Louisville, trying to be able to will them to victory was Ryan Conwell with 22 points, but no Brown in the fold, no chance for them. And then Texas Tech, they've been looking a little bit better without JT Toppin, cooled down in this game by Iowa State, 75-73 the final. As for Texas Tech, just 9-29 from 3, and inside the 3-point line, they took 27 2-point shots and they only made 10 of those, so that was a little bit less than tremendous for them. And for Texas Tech, they actually play even up on the turnover battle 10-10, but lost the rebound battle 39-29. And for Iowa State, two main guys step up in this game. Tamon Lipsby, who supplied 20 points, 4 assists, and then Joshua Jefferson, double-double with 18 points, 13 rebounds, threw in their 6 assists as well. So they find a way to persevere, get the job done there. For Auburn, they had everything on front of them. They are now 17-16 as they await their fate on Selection Sunday. And Tennessee has actually not been a great against the spread team thus far this season. They cover this spread, though, 72-62 the final, despite the fact that they were down 7 points at the half. Tennessee back to 16 overs to 16 under, so they're 50-50 with regards to that against the spread. They are currently finding themselves at a nice hearty 14-17-1 against the spread. But for Tennessee, they did get Nate Amon back in this game. That was big for them as he supplied the team with 27 points. Boy, did they need him. And for Tennessee, they win the turnover battle 12-6, and for Auburn, they will go 7 of 26 from 3. They gave up at one point, I believe it was a 19-1 run, and then Stephen Burrell picked up a technical. That was not great, to say the least. BYU's not been great without Richie Saunders, but held in there in this game against Houston. For BYU, up 41-37 at the half. They did relinquish it late, 73-66 final in this one, but a little bit of a better effort. BYU was able to get the cover, and A.J. DeMonsa, he was able to do his thing, giving the team 26 points. Kingston Fleming's on the flip side, 17 for Houston, and for BYU, they go 8 of 17 from 3-point range. Houston was able to win the rebound battle 37-30, and for both of these teams, very sloppy. BYU 18 turnovers, 16 for Houston, but Houston goes 16-20 at the free throw line, so they find a way to persevere, get the job done. Haven't even mentioned the fact that Duke got a massive scare against Florida State, 80-79 the final. Florida State was up at the half. Florida State led much of this game as well. Now, Isaiah Evans stepped up in a big way, 32.6 rebounds, but keep in mind, Caleb Foster currently out, Patrick Ngongba, he's been dealing with injury as well, so now they're relying a little bit more on Dame Sarr and Malik Brown. And for Florida State, they go 11-28 from 3 points. Robert McRae, Lashae Jones, they combine for 53 points. Florida State, I don't think they're going to go to the NCAA tournament, but actually played some very good basketball down the stretch, so credit where it is due. Xavier, they're probably going to be going to the Crown or something like that. UConn just dump trucks them 93-68 the final. And hey, for Xavier, they've been your top over team in all of college basketball. That was another over, 25 overs at 8 unders for them. So my goodness gracious. And in this case for Xavier, they just gave it up. For UConn, they go 12-32 from 3, but they dominate on the boards 40-28. They do a nice job in terms of playing even up on the turnover battle 10-10, as Xavier's actually taking great care of the ball. But for UConn, Solo Ball steps up. He gives the team 19 points, 4 of 10 from 3-point range. Xavier just 9-28 from 3-point range, as you did have Phil Barankovic be able to give you 22 points, but past that, not a lot of these guys. And for Purdue, it's been a rough last few weeks for them, but they get a win. They get a cover against Northwestern, 81-68 the final. A nice game here from Trey Kaufman, right of 19.6 rebounds. Oscar Clough, double-double out of him, 19 points, 10 rebounds. For Purdue, they win the turnover battle 9-7. They win the rebound battle 35-23. And for Northwestern, they go 6 of 14 from 3-point range. Not a lot inside, though. It's Nick Marnelli. He had 25 points. Jaden Reed at 19. Really nothing else, as the rest of the starters had either 2 or 4 points in this game, so that was a little bit less than savory. Do have to have this up before midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern, so there might be a few results that I'm not able to get to. But for Clemson, despite the fact that Carter Welling now at the fold, they find a way to persevere against North Carolina, 80-79 the final. Clemson's been a good under team, so this was a rare over out of them, as they just had a holes greater than some of its parts sort of approach here. 6 different guys scoring double figures. For North Carolina, 11 out of 30 from 3. As we know, they're dealing with the Caleb Wilson injury, but Henry Visar, 28 points, 17 rebounds. He did all that he could for North Carolina. Also threw in their 10 turnovers, but for North Carolina, they go 10 of 17 at the free throw line. When you lose a game by 1 point, that's typically a reason why. In North Carolina, they actually closed as a 2.5-point underdog in this game, so they were able to cover on the closing line. So a yay verily to that, and a yay verily to Kansas, taking down TCU 78-73 final in this one. Darren Peterson had a rough first half, came on strong in the second half. Now he goes 5 of 17 from the floor, but 13 of 16 at the free throw line. He was able to supply the team with 24 points. For Kansas, they close as 4.5-point favorites, so just barely able to get there, and Kansas has been one of your best under teams in all of college basketball, so a rare over for them as Kansas 10 overs to 21 unders thus far this season. And for TCU, 9 of 25 from 3. They got some punch from Dave the Punch, 24 points, 10 rebounds, but also 5 turnovers. And for TCU, they lose the turnover battle 14-10 as you had Flory Badunga down low, 13 points, 10 rebounds. He was able to do a nice job for Kansas, also supplying the team with 3 blocks as well. Wisconsin, they had a really nice first half against Washington, up double figures. They don't cover that spread though of right around about 6 to 6.5, 85-82 the final. We'll talk a little bit more about Wisconsin with our good friend in Rocco Miller as they go 15 out of 39 from 3 points. John Blackwell, 34 points, 6 of 12 from 3. Nick Boyd, 5 of 6 from 3, 23 points. Really not a ton out of anyone else. And Noel Winter was dealing with an injury, and that's a big reason why Wisconsin got just thrashed on the glass. 45-29. Washington wins the rebound battle. Hans Steinbach, he didn't want his college basketball career to end. 25 points, 16 rebounds for Washington. They go 7 of 23 from 3, but just the less efficient shooting team on this day. And Wisconsin, they were able to make all 8 of their free throw attempts as well. If you're looking at some of the other conference tournaments that are going down, right now we are seeing Utah Tech taking it to Abilene Christian, so we'll see if they're going to be able to close that out. And San Jose State most likely going to lose to New Mexico, but they were able to give a relatively spirited effort out there. UCLA, they found a way to win and cover against Rutgers 72-59 with Donovan Dent, a triple-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists, so he was able to do his thing. For Delaware State, they're going to be facing off against NC Central in the MEAC tournament in overtime. NC Central 83-76. They do find a way to persevere and get the job done. And Villanova has been a really good cover team all season long. They lose outright to Georgetown, and that was a game that went over the total. Villanova now 19-12 against the spread, and Georgetown has been atrocious against the spread this season. For Georgetown, 12-19 against the spread, but they did a nice job on this day, going 8 of 20 from 3. I still say Vincent Iwuchukwu has completely turned the fortunes of this team. He had just 0 points in this game as well. He didn't do anything whatsoever. It was all about Julius Halafana giving you 21 points, 10 rebounds for Georgetown. They do lose the turnover battle 14-10, but for this Villanova team, they go just 7 of 29 from 3 points. Georgetown able to shoot 51% from the floor, so a very nice winner out of them. Also a very nice winner out there in Old Conference USA as Middle Tennessee, they fall to Louisiana Tech by a count of 80-69. AJ Bates, 29 points. He puts the team on his back. If you're looking for the sloggiest half of the night, Tulane and Charlotte at the half was 20-18. Explosion in the second half. You still got the under if you took it. For Charlotte, they outscore Tulane in the second half 56-40. They win the game by a count of 74-60. And Loyola Chicago has been just an awful against the spread team this season. They do force overtime against Davidson. Fortunately, if you took the under, you still got that under, but Loyola Chicago, they wrap up 13-20 against the spread. Davidson, they find a way in overtime to win by a count of 64-59, and for Loyola Chicago, they held Davidson to going 6 of 24 from 3. Problem was they went 6 of 23 from 3 themselves and went 7 of 15 at the free throw line. Like, you wonder why you lose some of these games when you do that at the free throw line. Less than savory, to say the least, and this was pretty savory for Nevada, 84-80. We'll talk a little bit more about the Mountain West tournament with our good friend Rocco Miller. They were able to get the job done, and for Duquesne, 67-61. They take down Rhode Island in what was one of the more wackadoo games of the day, as for Duquesne, they absolutely dominate the turnover battle 14-1. They win the rebound battle 39-38, but Tyler Cochran went inferno mode. 34 points, 9 of 14 from 3. He had RJ Johnson score 9 points. Somebody else had more than 6. Tyler Cochran tried to do it all by himself for Rhode Island. Just unfortunately was a little bit too little, a little bit too late. No at-large bids punched to the NCAA tournament, but Creighton punched her ticket to being one of the worst against the spread teams in all of college basketball this season. They went to 10-21-1 against the spread. Seton Hall 72-61. They got the job done with Adam Clark supplying 16 points, 7 boards, 6 assists, and for Creighton, 8 of 34 from 3-point. Just a rough season for them. I'm going to cut this one a little bit short because I did have to do a lot of the breakdowns very, very late with all the TBDs on the slate. But that said, if you're taking a look at trend-wise where we're getting in college basketball right now, again, I had to do this with a few of those super late games pending. But overall for the season, it's been an unders and an underdog season. 2,871 and 2,710 against the spread for underdogs, hitting at 51.4%. The unders hitting at 50.6%. 2,871 2,825 unders, 2,757 overs. And if you look at the last 7 days in college basketball, we've actually gotten quite a few overs, 146 overs to 132 unders. I believe that we've got a push or two along the way as well, and underdogs sitting at about 53%, 147 and 131 against the spread. That's what we're seeing in college basketball right now. That's what we're all getting trend-wise. Coming up next, let's chat it up with our good friend Rocco Miller over at Practicegear.org. Right here on Subscribe with myself, David Peterson, now a part of the VC Family Podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be joined by this man, and a man that is so hard at work this season, Rocco Miller. He's doing great work over at Bracketeer.org, Basket Under Review, the Field of 68. You're seeing him all over the place because he does such great work looking at all 365 Division I teams, all these conferences, with giving out Team of the Week awards for every conference all season long. His bracketology is absolutely amazing. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter side checks at his first and last name, Rocco Miller, and then the number 8 altogether, and Rocco. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Greg. What a day. It's championship week. It's one of the highlighted days on the calendar annually, and we woke up to some serious fireworks, didn't we?
Oh, yes, we certainly did. And for Miami of Ohio, they take their first loss of the season at the most inopportune of times against UMass. And how do we shape up the bubble right now? Because there's so many people that don't want to let them in because of no quad one wins and everything like that, while seemingly everyone else on the bubble has been losing. And I need to get your thoughts because you're a man that knows all about the selection committee. You know what they're going to be looking at, and it feels like it's going to be a very hot button topic of conversation for the next few days.
Well, the last time I checked, in order to get a quad one win, you have to play a quad one game. So how can you fault the team for that? With the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, what they did was unprecedented, going 18-0 in the MAC, 28-0 versus Division I opponents in the regular season, and winning a bunch of games when they knew they had elimination at stake from an at-large perspective, and they passed every single test. It was kind of the opposite of that in the conference tournament, being up by 11 with about 8 minutes and change to go. Frank Martin and the UMass Minutemen somehow rally in stunning fashion, really, because it looked like they were cruising most of the game to end on a 29-14 run and advance to the semifinals. But with Miami, Ohio, we know one of the good things about some of these metrics, and you know me, Greg, I'm not a huge metrics guy just because I think you can dive into resumes and pick and separate teams organically and discuss them in a healthy way without always having to point to metrics, which can be beefed up in different ways. I think it really actually does help a team like Miami, Ohio, because with the wins above bubble tool, it's giving you credit for every result, even if it's just miniature amount of credit. They've beefed up all the way to a 2.43 in the wins above bubble. I don't expect the entire audience or even a fraction of the audience to understand all of that. But basically what it's saying is if any of the bubble teams played Miami, Ohio's schedule, the actual Miami, Ohio won 2.5 games above what would be expected. And so you account that, and that was before tip-off. So if you take this loss today, which will be a painful loss for the Tool, they're probably still right around 2 or maybe around 1.75 wins above bubble. So they're clearly in. They're basically even. I did the math earlier. They'd be basically even with the Iowa Hawkeyes right now. I think the Iowa Hawkeyes are pretty safe. So they're in a great spot. They're getting into the tournament. But then when the seeding element of the process begins, ends, they're going to lose a bunch of comparisons. And so I think what you're going to see is the Miami, Ohio Redhawks playing in Dayton, Ohio, about an hour away from campus. And that's going to be pretty exciting. I think that'll be memorable. I think it'll be sold out. I think it'll be a hard ticket.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And if you're looking at fun and intrigue, I think that there's more people I want to see Miami of Ohio in the tournament rather than some team that lost 13 to 14 games. And I'm right there with you. And just for people that are wondering, oh, how weak is the bubble this year? Do you ever remember a year where it feels like every single team on the bubble is seemingly upchucking all over themselves? Because I feel like that's made your job very, very difficult looking at these teams with 13 plus losses that none of them are humping themselves right now. Like, absolutely none of them.
It's been funny, but I like the chaos. I embrace the chaos. And there's certainly been other years where bubble teams are choking with big opportunities, but that's why they're bubble teams, Greg. They have warts to begin with, especially the power conference teams that tend to lose at least once a week. If they're playing twice a week, they'll lose at least once a week. I think our expectations of bubble teams, especially this year, are a little too high. I kind of expected a good amount of them to lose last Saturday. I thought, Friday and Sunday were the good days for teams like VCU and Santa Clara. Santa Clara, of course, on Monday gets the win that I think people in Bronco country are going to remember forever, getting the big win over St. Mary's, which will put them in for good. And they'll be celebrating that on Sunday. Yeah, the rest of the bubble just kind of played themselves out. In an interesting way, it clears up a big amount of the teams because they're getting evaluated independently. On the flip side, we're operating all year long for bracket forecasting to take around 47 teams, but that does not account for bid steals. So now that we know the MAC's going to have a bid steal, and there's still a high probability that the Mountain West that I'm currently talking to you from will also have a bid steal. We're now going from 47 to 45. So as many of those teams that didn't play themselves in, we are also losing spots for them. At the end of the day, it might all work out just fine. As a veteran of this, I would just say, stay the course. It's a long week. We're going to learn a lot more. You don't know what's going to happen if even in the Big East, like if Seton Hall were to win that tournament or somebody comes out of nowhere, right? So it always has a funny way of working itself out. And I think by Sunday, we'll take a nice deep breath and look at it and be like, okay, here we go.
That is very calming because it feels like everyone is running around like chickens with their heads cut off and nobody knows what's going on the bubble right now. So that's a lot of fun as Rocco Miller does such great work over at bracketeer.org. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And that leads me to a follow-up question here. Is there a team that we're going to call the line of demarcation a 4 seed, that is below a 4 seed, that you've been looking at recently and they might be able to cause a little bit of chaos? And I'm not saying Final Four, national title or anything like that, but I mean, when we see all these teams that are outside like the top 15, top 20, hurting themselves, not winning games, is there a few teams that stand out where, yeah, maybe they were on the bubble, maybe they were just outside the bubble, just barely in, and they've actually done something to show you that, hey, this team might be lively in March?
I think there's a few. I think, I'll start with your home state school, the Wisconsin Badgers.
The team of volatility.
That's right. But you have to remember today's win against Washington and the last performance of the season. Nolan Winter has been out. So that's obviously a big thing to track as we enter March Madness. But it seemed like he may have been able to give it a go today from what I heard. I would imagine another week off is going to really help him out. And maybe he'll even go, future Big Ten tournament games, right? They're still alive. So we'll see how that plays out with the Badgers. But I think just the fact that they've proven they've been able to go to a place like Michigan and win and go to a place like Purdue most recently, and obviously go into Illinois, nobody outside of the top 4 seed lines has 3 wins like that. I mean, their best 3 wins are absolutely elite. And those are the types of games you got to go win if you're going to get deep into the tournament. So I think just the evidence of Wisconsin doing it, that will give them a lot of confidence in those key critical moments where games swing in the balance, especially when you're in the fight against the big dogs of the NCAA tournament. And so we'll see if Wisconsin can carry that confidence forward. I think they should be able to as long as they're full strength. I think another team as well, St. Mary's is a team worth mentioning, as is Santa Clara. We'll have to see what their draw looks like. I certainly like both of their chances to win their opening round game. They're kind of on the flip side of 7-10. St. Mary's projects as a 7 seed and Santa Clara projects as a 10. But I think those teams got really, really good at the end of the year. And I think a lot of the country may not really realize that because the WCC tends to get lost in the shuffle. If they lose to Gonzaga, you don't really know what to think of them. And of course, St. Mary's did beat Gonzaga, don't forget, on the final day of the season. And then that game against Santa Clara was a great game. I mean, Randy Bennett wasn't very happy with the way they defended the Broncos, but Santa Clara made a lot of tough shots. I mean, I think in a 7-game series, St. Mary's wins probably 4-2. I think both those teams have a lot of upside, and I think Randy Bennett's going to have St. Mary's pretty pissed off when they get to the tournament. And I think they've just gotten better throughout the year. So I think they're going to work on improving what they did. We'll see if they have to go up against an elite athletic team like from the SEC. But don't forget, they went and played Arizona and Ole Miss in their exhibition games. They also played Vanderbilt down in the Battle for Atlantis. And I think that's going to give them a lot of actual preparation that they've held on to, plus the 2 Gonzaga games, obviously an elite athletic team as well. So we shall see if they can finally break through to the Sweet 16. I think they can. And then I think the last one I think I'll throw out there for you is, and it's kind of boring, but Ohio State, I know they don't have the big resume win that we would like to see. They didn't get any big road wins, but Iowa is a team they played a couple of weeks ago, and they were clearly the weaker team. They got beat up in kind of every facet of the game. They lose by 17, not competitive. And right after that, they got to go home. They got the Purdue win. They picked up other solid wins. They destroyed Indiana. And then they got to rematch Iowa here at the conference tournament for the Big Ten. And they were clearly the better team. Like, so on a neutral court, I think Ohio State's really figured out a lot with Bruce Thornton. I think they have a lot of upside because there's a great amount of individual talent, and they seem to finally be clicking from a camaraderie standpoint. And that's a really key element to advancing deep into this tournament. So I'll throw Ohio State in the mix. It's the first time I've ever been high on them in probably 4 years. So here we are, but it's all about playing your best basketball at the right time.
Yep, absolutely. I've been liking what I've been seeing out of Ohio State as well. Getting back John Mobley has been absolutely massive for them, as Rocco Miller does such great work over at bracketteer.org is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Rocco, I think that you'd agree with me. I feel like there's been 4 teams that have separated themselves from the rest. That'd be Duke, Arizona, Michigan, along with Florida. But with Duke, as we are doing this, had some trouble with Florida State. It looks like they're restoring order here in the second half, but is there a legitimate concern with Duke right now with the Caleb Foster injury, the Patrick Ngongba injury as well? Because we know that when they've been at full health, perhaps the best team in all of college basketball, but right now they're wounded and trying to find their way without 2 main guys.
Yeah, well, this is their first game without Foster. So for me, it's wait and see. You know, we don't know what we don't know. So I'm not going to make an assumption on it, but I do know that there are plenty of great pieces still available. Of course, nobody more important than Cam Boozer, but I love I think I told you when I did the Cal Duke game, Isaiah Evans, his arms are like Velociraptor arms. He can take away your best player defensively. That's a key weapon for Duke. As you know, Greg, NCAA tournament games typically won with defensive stops. Eventually, you got to make shots too, but I mean, that is the key ingredient, and Duke's going to be really tough to score on. Look back at that Michigan game. They held mighty Michigan to 63 points, and I think Duke can really, really lock down when they need to. You know, if they have to win ugly, that's fine. They've proven they can do that. And I think they're going to be a really, really tough out. So I was really interested about this Florida State matchup today because I actually think Florida State's performed at least the last month like a top 25 team. They made some tweaks defensively with a couple personnel switches. And I just love the way Florida State's been playing. I was really, I'm here at the Mountain West tournament, but I was really interested to see how it would go. I'm not surprised Florida State gave them a good battle. It looks like they won't win, but what a job by Luke Lau, because I mean, it looked like they were tanking to the bottom of the ACC when league play started, and then by the end they were playing spoiler against everybody, and they were legitimately good. So kudos to them. They have a giant arrow pointing upwards heading into next season.
Yep, they certainly do, and I liked what I saw out of Florida State towards the back half of the season as well, so that was very nice to see, as we do have Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at bracketteer.org, joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, and you mentioned it, you are at the Mountain West tournament right now, and just how do you take a look at this Mountain West tournament where we know that it's going to be Nevada versus Utah State in one semifinal matchup? We do not know the other semifinal matchup as we are doing this, but I think the Mountain West is very intriguing because you've got quite a few teams that are fighting for NCAA tournament berths as well, and I feel like Utah State might be the safest of those teams.
Yeah, Utah State's in the tournament, so we'll just leave it at that, but I think it gets really interesting from there. I talked to them after the game today, to the whole staff. They've been on me all year about what seed they're going to be and how they can play up. I don't think they can get above a 7 seed just because there's just too many teams with great resumes from the 7 seeds up, but I think they can maybe crack that line with some help. We saw Georgia struggling with Ole Miss. That would be an example of a team that they could pass. For them, the most important thing is I think they need to be playing their best basketball. They obviously were very inconsistent the last 3 or 4 weeks. One big win, one disappointing loss. Seemed like every week during that stretch. The UNLV thing got cured today, so congrats for that achievement. Losing by double digits twice and then beating them by 20. What a wild 3 games those were. But I think now that that's behind them, they can lock in here. Nevada, in that matchup, Nevada played so hard today. I was really, really impressed by that. A little different than some of the Nevada teams from years past to where, just some of those players and characters didn't have that toughness. This team's really, really tough. Corey Camper Jr. plays tough. Lowry, the transfer from NAIA, the Masters University, Greg, in Santa Clarita, he was like the most important player to me from my observation. Just all of his involvement with defense and setting screen and being in the right place at the right time, being a leader. Nevada, they beat Utah State 19 days ago, the last time they played. So I think we have a really great one on our hands. Utah State should be the slight favorite, I'm sure, but I think it's going to be, Nevada's playing for their life. And if they play anything like they did, they got a real shot to make the championship game. And then in the bottom half of the bracket, New Mexico, they somewhat still have a chance for an at-large. There's probably only one scenario left where they really would get an at-large, and that would be losing the championship game to the one and only Aggies of Utah State. That would still get the conference 2 bids. But like we talked about at the beginning of the show, we're running out of spots for a New Mexico to take. Even that scenario is a little concerning for the league because the league still might be stuck with 1 bid if that happens. The other concerning thing for the Lobos, although it's probably nice on a basketball level to play San Jose State instead of Boise State, when and if they beat San Jose State, that's not going to get them very far in terms of their resume. It's really not going to do anything for it. So now instead of getting 2 good wins on their way to the finals, they can only possibly get 1. So they certainly need to play the Aztecs. New Mexico has a ton to play for. They might end up having to win the whole thing, as I just broke down for you. And I think the way Colorado State played down the stretch, I know they had a couple not so sharp performances at the very end, but they did have an undefeated February. They really learned some things about themselves. And I'm curious to see how they come out. That game's starting as we speak. So it should be interesting from them. Obviously, all or nothing for them. And I think the San Diego State Aztecs, it's been a weird year for them. They had some very inconsistent results. I can't tell if the players are really playing together like as a team like we're used to. It's a very different type of Aztec team. It's also a very talented team. So it's a dangerous proposition. Like if they can click this week, they're clearly good enough to dominate individually. And so they need that team element. Brian Dutcher had a week to get ready for this. So big spotlight on the Aztecs, but I also wouldn't be shocked if it just kind of stays a set of broken parts and they fall short. So I don't think San Jose State can win the tournament, but Colby Garland hitting threes, man, that was awesome in the win over Boise State.
Yep, that was awesome. And man, for Boise State, you want to talk about a disappointing year. You lose to a Division II team based in a strip mall to start it off, and then you lose as a double-figure favorite against San Jose State. Not necessarily what they were looking for there, but what we're always looking for on this podcast is great insights. And Rocco, you provide it every single time. You're doing such great work at so many different platforms. So all the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, well, this weekend's a big one, Greg, and I appreciate that. Bracketeer.org is the home website that I own and operate. Of course, we'll have bracket updates each of the next 3 days. Probably not going to be too much changing after Saturday. I think we'll have narrowed down at least the bubble part of things. We'll continue to work hard throughout the offseason with non-conference scheduling updates. And NCAA tournament coverage is also coming as well from myself, from guys like Rob Lostella, Pete Jan. He's doing a terrific job at the Big East tournament. And we have, Avetta Abraman helping with different photograph opportunities, but she's awesome in the press conferences too. So follow all of our stuff because we're doing more than ever on that side of things as well. And appreciate everybody's support. If you want to continue supporting us, there's a little support button there at the top. You can always donate. Last but not least, Field of 68 will have an exciting weekend. Our last Fielding the 68 show will be Friday at 5 Eastern. I'll be on there to break it all down. And then, of course, our annual Selection Sunday show will start about 45 minutes before the real Selection Sunday show, where we will break down our final bracket as a panel. Lead right into the selection show where Jeff Goodman, myself, and Brad Wachtel will break down and react to every single selection from the real bracket show. So it's always a lot of fun. If you miss it, you can go back and watch it on YouTube. If you watch it on your computer while you're watching CBS, I always recommend that because you'll get some real reactions from us.
Absolutely. And our guy Rocco does such an amazing job looking at all 365 teams all throughout the season as well. He always joins me during the off season. We've been through it for many, many months. Now we're hitting the crescendo, and no better man to chat about it with than Rocco. So big thanks to Rocco for joining me on Coast to Coast Seeps, now part of the VSiN family podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. Always great to be joined by Rocco Miller, who does such great work over at Bracketeer.org, doing a nice job looking at this great game that we all know and love of college basketball. He's one of the busiest men out there in college basketball this time of year with his bracketology over at Bracketeer.org. Does a great job over at Basket Under Review, Field of 68. He's all over the place, and every single time he joins me, he lends such great insight. So, big thanks to Rocco for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Friday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81. We are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is essentially tip time with these conference tournaments. Aside from the SWAC and the MEAC, those two conference tournaments are going to be at the bottom. Everything else is in time order, so the earliest tip time is out there in the Atlantic 10, then the Big 10, Conference USA, American, SEC, the MAC, Big East, ACC, Big 12, WAC, Big West, Mountain West, and then the SWAC and the MEAC. So how about if we get things started? 797, 798. George Washington, our nation's first president, plays St. Louis. This is going to be out there in the great city of Pittsburgh. And right now with St. Louis, they are a 6.5 point favorite. Totals anywhere between 160.5 to 162.5. So we are seeing a little bit of a range here. And I did set my total at a 158.5. I do like the under. You do have a St. Louis team that obviously has been very efficient on offense. They're a top 3 team in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage. Haven't quite been the same here recently. Robbie Avila seems to be dealing with some plantar fascia. Now for St. Louis overall for the season, 48th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They have been slowed down significantly over the last few games ever since he has been dealing with that. George Washington, a brisk tempo team, but not necessarily a team that's going to be looking to play at warp speed, 112th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And I did set GW as an underdog of just 4.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take the points. It's a George Washington team that's in the top 30 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis away from home. In games played away from home, they're shooting about 36.3% from 3-point range. That's a top 55 mark in the country. And for George Washington, they have been outside the top 200 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home. Main kryptonite has been down low, but getting back Rafael Castro, who's been able to give you 15.5 points, 9 rebounds at a block and a half per contest. That's big. He was dealing with injury towards the middle part of the season. Christian Jones is able to shoot 36% from 3. He gives you 10 points per game. You've got a lot of depth with this team as you pretty much have 9 different guys for the team that are able to see at least 19 minutes per game. So I think that is going to be massive. And then on the flip side for St. Louis, a lot of people think that it is all about Robbie Avila, but it is very much a whole is greater than the sum of its parts approach, as you do have Avila, who's been your main scorer with about 12.5 points per game, but you've got essentially 8 different guys that give you over 7 points per game. This team as a collective does shoot 40.5% from 3-point range, and everyone is going to be talking about the offense, but this has also been a St. Louis team that has been very good on the defensive side of things, as in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, this St. Louis bunch are clocking in right around about 18th in all of college basketball. Games played away from home, that does rise into the top 15, and Colin Thames has been able to give you about 10 points, 5 rebounds per game. Trey Green shoots 45.5% from 3, 11 points per contest, but again, it does feel like this has been a little bit of a different St. Louis team here over the last few games, and the one kryptonite that this team has is turnovers. They are outside the top 210 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. George Washington has had a few turnover issues themselves, and for St. Louis, to their credit, they're a top 15 team in terms of both opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, but I do think that those turnovers cost you an over and allow George Washington to hold in this game. So set my line at 4.5. I'm taking the points with our nation's first president, and I do like the under. Semi-total 158.5. 799, 800 on the card. St. Bonaventure and Dayton are going to be doing battle. Dayton is right now a 6.5 to a 7-point favor. 140.5 to 141.5 is the total. I do like the over. A semi-total at a 143.5. Have a Dayton team that has been neither here nor there with their tempo. 187th in the country in terms of total possessions. St. Bonaventure 207th. So two teams are relatively moderate with regards to their pace, and it's a St. Bonaventure team that in games played away from home, shooting 38.9% for three. That's the top 20 mark in the country. Overall, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, entered into yesterday 97th in games played away from home. That does go into the top 70. Dayton has been a little bit more shaky with their offense, 161st in terms of points per possession, and for Dayton, their bread is buttered by generating turnovers. 7th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they gamble for those turnovers. They allow opponents to shoot 37.1% from three-point in a road/shoot score venue, and that is well outside the top 285 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Dayton, they've been a team that's had a little bit of struggle with their own three-point shooting percentage at about 34%. Javon Bennett is supplying you with about 16 points per game. Emil Letang has versatility with about 12.5 points, 6 rebounds per game. Keontae Jones is able to supply about 8 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but not a team that's going to fight for those second and third chances. This team is well outside the top 275 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, and for a St. Bonaventure team that is a top 100 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage, they should be able to hold in this game. You've got Frank Mitchell who's averaging a double-double, 16.5 points, 10.5 boards. Caden Charles serves in there, 6.5 rebounds per game. Daryl Simmons shoots 42% from three, 16.5 points per game. St. Bonaventure, about a country average team in terms of taking care of the ball. They themselves have been well outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, and St. Bonaventure overall about 260th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Does improve to right around about 175th in games played away from home. Think that that's enough for the Bonnies to hold in there, and think that this is close enough for late game following for the over. So, sub total at a 143.5 like the over, and with St. Bonaventure made them 3.5 point dogs, so we'll want to take those points. 801, 802 on the card. You've got Duquesne, and they're going to be playing against VCU. VCU is a favorite of 8.5 to 9.5 points, and total finding this at a 153.5, and I'm going to take the points with Duquesne. I did set them as a 6.5 point underdog. Now, if you look overall for the season, Duquesne has had a tough time guarding the 3-point line. Teams are shooting over 35.2% from three against them, about 261st in the country, but in games played away from home entering that game against Rhode Island, that goes down to 33.2%. That's a top 125 mark in the country. They've been dealing with a few injuries as they got back John Hughley, but he has not been himself ever since coming off of injury. But Jaron Scoonyard, Jimmy Williams, these are your main two guys supplying about 32 points per game. Goonyard has been able to shoot 36% from three, and these two guys combined for about 2.8 steals and the neighborhood about 6.5 assists per contest. And for Duquesne, they've been a top 85 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They're lacking a little bit in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line, but they've been able to do an okay job on the glass. Now, VCU is going to have a little bit of an advantage down low because they just by committee have been able to do a pretty solid job ranking in the top 125 with regards to rebound percentage. Duquesne is more country average. You've got Terrence Hill, who's been able to supply with about 14 points per contest, shoots 36% from three, and it's a VCU team that overall shoots about 36% from three. That's the top 55 mark in the country, but they're at a bit of a disadvantage down low. VCU about 88th in the country in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for Duquesne, they're more around about 62nd. As for VCU, they've been very good in terms of getting to the free throw line. Top 25 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. Laser Djokovic has been a big reason why he's been able to do a nice job supplying this team with 14 points at about 6'10" or so. Shoots 37% from three. Brandon Jennings has been able to shoot 40% from three, 9 points per game. And overall, this team does shoot about 74% at the free throw line. Duquesne is a team that is going to put you on the free throw line a bit. VCU is going to as well. And for Duquesne, this has been a squad that shoots about 72% of the free throw line. That's more around country average, but have David Dixon down low, who's been able to give you about a block and a half, 5.5 boards, 8.5 points per game. He's been able to find his sea legs. They dealt with Maximus Edwards not necessarily being what they were expecting, but Cameron Crawford has stepped up in a big way, give you a little bit of 3-point shooting, about 5 points, a few boards per contest, and I do think that with Duquesne having that advantage down low, with them being able to generate turnovers along with they themselves having quite a few turnover issues, they do rank outside the top 250 in terms of ball security. That it's going to cause for a little bit of a lower scoring game that Duquesne is going to be able to hold in there on. Keep in mind, this is being played in Pittsburgh. That's where Duquesne is based, so I think that helps them out here. I set my line at 6.5. We'll take the points with Duquesne, and I'm going to be in on the total under as well. 803, 804 on the board. It is Davidson, and they're going to be facing off against St. Joe's. St. Joe's hopes to not be average Joe's as they're checking in as a 1.5 point favorite. Total on this game between 132.5 to 133.5, and set a total of a 134. I do like the over. You've got a Davidson team that's playing very slowly in terms of total possessions per game. They check in 354th in the country. For St. Joseph's, they're much more of a mid-tempo team out of 365 Division I teams, right around about 199th in the country, and they've been a rock-solid defensive team and a team that doesn't shoot it well from three. St. Joe's 332nd in the country with a 30.5% three-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, Davidson 61st, but that goes up to 37.3% away from home. That is a top 45 mark in the country, where St. Joe's has been able to shine, has been down low, as they've got a guy in Justice Ajabor who's been able to do a nice job giving this team about 2 blocks per contest, only about 5.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but does a nice job protecting the interior. They've been able to get a little bit more three-point shooting here down the stretch out. Jaden Glover, 15.5 points on 35.5% three-point shooting, stepped up after Deuce Jones pretty much decided to leave the team. For St. Joe's, they are a top 35 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and they're overall top 50 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession base, despite the fact that they really don't generate a lot of turnovers. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they're also a top 75 team with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Desir Haskins has been able to step up. He's given this team right around about 11.5 points per game. And then on the flip side for Davidson, it's a whole greater than some of its parts approach. You don't have a single guy on the roster that gives you over 4 rebounds per game, but they're not the world's worst rebound rate team. They're hovering right around about 200th in the country. Now, where Davidson does go wrong is free throw shooting, 65.8%. That is the bottom 15 mark in the country, but this team does go bombs away from 3 with Parker Frederickson and Robert Blums, both shooting 42% from 3. They combine for about 23 points per game. Sam Brown has been able to give you about 8 points, 2.5 assists per game. Josh Scovins has been able to chip in there about 11 points per contest as well. And with this Davidson team, they do a nice job protecting the ball, top 100 team, in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Think that they've got just enough offense to be able to get the job done against the St. Joe's team that all season long has had a little bit of a tough time putting points up on the board. And I do think that the late fouls do just enough to get you over. So set my line at 2, willing to lay 1.5 with St. Joe's, and I do like the over, so my total at a 134. 805, 806 on the betting board. It is the Ohio State University. They are going to be playing against Michigan. This is out there for the Big Ten tournament in Illinois, and Michigan currently 12.5 to 13.5 point favorites. Totals between 153.5 to 154.5, and I'm going to take the points with Ohio State. I did set them as an 11-point underdog. Ohio State has been able to do a good job of being able to execute the little things. Ohio State currently 29th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 19th in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, and they do a better job in terms of taking care of the ball. 96th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. Michigan is 186th, and Michigan, they are 7th in the country in terms of points per possession. They're really good down low. They're a top 20 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. They're a top 20 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, and they've really been able to pick up some steam with their 3-point shooting as well. But Ohio State has been able to do a nice job in terms of guarding the 3-point line as well. Going into yesterday, 42nd in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and now you've got John Mobley back for this Ohio State team. That's their main dynamo guy from 3-point, shooting 42.5% from the outside, 16 points per game. Bruce Thornton, he's been able to supply this team with 20 points, 4 assists per contest, and then you've been able to get really good production out of Devin Royal down low with about 5.5 rebounds per game. Now, Ohio State not going to quite be able to hold a candle to Michigan on the boards, as Michigan, they are a top 20 team with regards to rebound percentage. You've got Yaxel Lendeborg, Morris Johnson, Ade Merrill. All 3 of these guys give you at least 6.9 rebounds per game. Between the 3 of them, you've been able to get a little bit over 5 shot blocks per game as well. And then with Johnson, he shoots 42% from 3. Like Elliot Kadu, he's been able to shoot about 38% from 3 along Trey McKinney, with both of these guys combining for about 19.5 points per game. But now you are without LJ Kaysen, who was a 40% 3-point shooter. He was able coming off the bench, give you a little bit of something. Now, I don't think that it's like completely going to derail this Michigan team or anything like that, but it's a little bit of a loss. And it has been a Michigan team that has allowed opponents to be able to grab a few second and third chances as well. Michigan, with having a few turnover issues against an Ohio State team that's desperate for this win, I think that Ohio State going to do just enough to hold in there, and you're going to have a bit of a tempo war as well. Ohio State, a little bit of a slower tempo team, 247th in terms of total possessions per game, and Michigan is looking to move it. They are 32nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Did semi-total 153. I think that the defense just good enough for the under. So going to be looking at the under and the points here with Ohio State. 807, 808 out there in the city of Chicago. You've got Wisconsin and Illinois doing battle. Illinois 8.5 point favorites. Totals between 154.5 to 155.5. Set Illinois is a 6.5 point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to take the points with Wisconsin. You've got a Wisconsin group that has just done a great job in terms of shooting it from 3 points. Going to the yesterday, shooting over 37% from three-point range in a road/short venue, and it's a Wisconsin team that they are not afraid to take the threes. They are a top 15 team in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from three-point range, entered into yesterday 24th in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Illinois, they're even more efficient. They lead the country in points per possession overall and points per possession in a road/short venue. Their games just involve very clean possessions as well. Illinois is actually a pretty low-tempo team. They have slowed themselves way down from past years. They're only about 294th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Wisconsin hovering more around about 125th, but for Illinois, they are a top 15 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They also generate absolutely no turnovers whatsoever. And for Wisconsin, they are doing the little things well. Top 30 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. In terms of their free throw shooting percentage at 76+%, that's a top 30 mark in the country. But on the 365 Division I teams, Illinois is 365th in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Now they're a little bit stronger down low with the Avicic brothers being able to combine for about 11 rebounds per game. But Nolan Winter on the flip side for Wisconsin has been able to give you about 8 rebounds per game. Keaton Wagler has done a nice job supplying the team with about 18 points. David Mirovic, he's been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game. And getting back Kylan Boswell, I think is very important for this team as well. I do think that Illinois should be able to get the job down here, but it is a Wisconsin team that continues to do the little things well. I think that that's going to be able to keep them lively in this game. And keep in mind for Illinois, in a pressure spot, they do shoot 79.3% at the free throw line as well. So even though I think that this is a lower tempo game, I set my total 156.5. I like the over, and I'm willing to take 7+ here with Wisconsin. 809, 810 on the card. It is the Big Ten tournament with Purdue and Nebraska doing battle. Purdue opening up a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite. Total I'm seeing anywhere between 142.5 to 144. I did set my total 142.5, so 143 plus does become my buy point on the under. You have a Nebraska team that has been able to do a really good job with their defense away from home, and neither of these teams are really pushing any sort of tempo whatsoever. Now, Purdue, a top 10 team in terms of points per possession, but they're also 323rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Meanwhile, you've got a Nebraska group that's about 248th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and for this Nebraska group, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 14th in the country. Now, I will say this about Nebraska. They sort of dare you to shoot from three. Teams are attempting about 49% of their field goal attempts from three-point. That is a top 15 percentage in the country, and Purdue, they've been one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country, shooting overall 38.5% from three-point. That's a top 15 mark in the country. Meanwhile, Nebraska, they themselves take over 48% of their field goal attempts from three-point on offense. That's a top 25 mark in the country, and they shoot about 35.4% from the outside. But for Nebraska, they can go to the inside when they need to, with Rink Mass doing a nice job giving the team 13.6 rebounds per game, and they've been a top 25 team with their two-point shooting percentage, and Purdue's outside the top 210 with regards to opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Bryce Sanford has been your main man for Nebraska. He's able to throw in there about 18 points, 5 assists, and he shoots about 40% from three-point. Nebraska's done a great job in terms of winning the turnover battle, top 35 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, they're a top 65 team in terms of generating turnovers, and Purdue's well outside the top 200 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis. We'll say for Purdue, they are outside the top 100 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they've been much better when they've been away from home rather than at home. But for Purdue, to have a few, shall we say, question marks with what you're going to be able to get on the post. You've got Trey Kaufman, Ryan Oscar Clough. These two guys have been able to combine for about 23 points and combine about 17 or so rebounds per game. But again, they're not necessarily doing the world's greatest job in terms of guarding the post. And then Braden Smith, he's your main man. 15 points, 8.5 assists, shoots 39% from three. Fletcher Lawyer, 42% three-point shooter, 13.5 points per game. CJ Cox has been a nice little ancillary piece for this team, but it is also a Purdue team that finds themselves outside the top 200 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well. They're not allowing a lot of second and third chances on the glass, but they're allowing a lot of clean looks the first time around. It's a Purdue team that does a great job taking care of the ball, top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis on offense. On defense, not putting you under duress, so outside the top 250 with that regard. So semi line at 2.5, 3+. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Nebraska, seeing about a 3.5 out there, and right now seeing a 143.5 on the board, semi at a 142.5. So I do like that 143 plus to the under. 8-11, 8-12 on the card. You've got UCLA, and they're going to be playing against Michigan State. Michigan State opens up a 5 to a 5.5 point favorite with a total of 142.5. I'm going to be in on the under, semi-total at a 138.5. Michigan State, a top 40 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis away from home, and they've got a very sizable advantage on the glass. With UCLA, they just have not been able to pull in their offensive rebounds in general, and they're overall 182nd in the country in terms of overall rebound percentage. Michigan State, meanwhile, they're checking in third in the country country, and in games played away from home, they have not allowed teams to be able to grab any sort of second and third chances whatsoever. In a road/short environment, teams are grabbing 19.1% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. That is numero uno in all of college basketball. Now, it's Michigan State team has been a little bit shaky on offense, but you'll be interested to know they've been a much better three-point shooting team away from home rather than at home. They shoot 32.7% from three-point range at home, 38.9% in a road/short venue. That's a top 15 mark in the country. You've had Jackson Kaler do a nice job shooting about 40% from three-point range for this team, and he's been your main rebounder, supplying you with about 13 points, 9 rebounds per game. Jeremy Fears, he's got no fears with his 9 assists, 15.5 points per game, and then Cohen Carr does a nice job shipping in there about 11.5 points per game. It's been a little bit up and down with regards to backcourt play, but you know that the front court is going to be rock solid, and in a pressure spot, team does shoot 76% at the free throw line, top 55 mark in the country. Meanwhile, for UCLA, this has been one of the best three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. Currently, as a collective, they shoot about 38.2% from three-point. That does go down to about 36.7% in a road/short venue, but still has been able to do a nice job there. But they do go up against a Michigan State team that allows you to shoot about 32.4% from three. That's the top 100 mark in the country. Donovan Dent has been the main facilitator, 13.5 points, a little bit over 7 assists per contest. Have to love what Tyler Bill brings to the table. 18 points, shoots 46% from three. Sky Clark has been able to shoot 45.5% from three, and UCLA takes great care of the ball. They're a top 12 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. With Michigan State, their defensive success does not come off of generating turnovers. They're well outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They just don't give you clean looks, and this figures to be a pretty slowed down game. Michigan State 273rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. UCLA checks in 299. So I did set Michigan State as a 6.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, maybe by total at 138.5. So I also like this total to the under as well. You've got 8-13, 8-14. Missouri State and Louisiana Tech do battle from Alabama. This is for the Conference USA tournament, and with Louisiana Tech, they're a 1.5 point favorite. Total on scheme between 132.5 to 135. So this number is a little bit all over the place. Set my total at a 133. Mostly seeing right around about 133.5, 134.5, and I'm going to be in on the under, mainly because you have a Louisiana Tech team that's been really good on defense. In games played away from home, they're a top 40 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, 314th in terms of total possessions per game. Missouri State has bumped up their tempo a little bit to about 219th of the country in terms of total possessions per game. Not a team that's really going to light you up from three. Neither of these teams will. Missouri State overall shoots 33.2% from three. We'll say going into yesterday, that did go up to 35.2% in a road/short venue. Louisiana Tech does not shoot it well from three-point range away from home, 25.8%. That is a bottom 10 mark in all of college basketball, but they have a big advantage on the glass, as Missouri State is a neither here nor there rebounding team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. Are about 200th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Louisiana Tech, in terms of percentage of the missed shots that become an offensive rebound, 35%. That is 19th in the country. And for Missouri State, the main guys that are able to pop it from three-point range have the last name Williams, as Kobe Williams has been able to give this team 15 points. He shoots 38% from three, and then Trey Williams is up to 9.5 points. He shoots 36.5% from three-point range. Keith Palak III has really been the main guy for this team, 17 points, 6.5 boards, 3.5 assists, so does a little bit of everything. And Michael Osibenusu has been able to give you about 7 or so boards per contest as well. But for Louisiana Tech, I do like the main backcourt piece for this team, as you've been able to have DJ Turn It Up Dudley supply 14 points. He actually shoots 39% from three, pretty much nobody else on the roster shoots about 31.5% from three, but AJ Bates is able to give you 11 points, 5 assists per contest. Louisiana Tech has a tough time taking care of the ball, right around about 300th in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. Missouri State is well outside the top 245 as well, and with this bunch in Missouri State, they're not going to be able to get any good looks inside. This Louisiana Tech team is a top 25 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. With the way that they're able to manhandle the boards, I do think that they should be able to get the job done, but I could only set my line at 1. Like any sort of points, 1.5 is right now what I'm seeing with Missouri State. I'd like to see more than 1.5, but I'm going to be willing to take the points, because in a tight spot, you have a Louisiana Tech team that is a bottom 10 team in the country with their free throw shooting percentage at 65.9%. Though I will say Missouri State, they're not a lot better. They're clocking in 67.6%. That's bottom 40 mark in the country. So I do like the under, so my total 133, and made my line 1 with Louisiana Tech. Going to be willing to take the points and not the money line here with Missouri State. 8-15, 8-16 on the board. It is Kennesaw State. We give our O to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They are going to be playing against Sam Houston State. This game does not have numbers, but I've got my handicap, as I did set Sam Houston State as a 4-point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 3.5 with them, 4.5 or more. Take the points with Kennesaw, and then set a total of a 160. So 159.5 for less, and on the over 160.5 or higher, the under. You have a Kennesaw State team that is playing at absolute warp speed in terms of total possessions per game. 17th in the country. Sam Houston State not shy to run either. They're 83rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Sam Houston State really doing a good job of giving themselves second and third chances in games played away from them. 33.4% of their missed shots become an offensive rebound. That is a top 35 mark in the country. Kennesaw State, 34% of their missed shots away from them become an offensive rebound. That's an even better mark. No, I will say, for Kennesaw State, the one place where they really don't want to be is the free throw line. This is a bunch that shoot 69.8% of the free throw line. That's about 274th in the country. That could come into play in a pressure spot. Sam Houston State more around about 72.3%. And for Sam Houston State, Pool Boy King, great name. He's been doing a little bit of everything for this team. He has been able to be that main guy with about 14 points per game, but it very much is a whole is greater than some of its parts approach with Sam Houston State. While you do have that main score, right now you've got right around about 7 different guys that give you at least 8.5 points per game for this team. Vakalo Illich has been able to step up in a big way down low with about 6.5 rebounds per game. Kashai Knott is sort of that do-it-all mixer and shaker, 10.5 points, pair of steals, 8 rebounds. He shoots 39% from three-point range. They've had Isaiah Manning go out of the fold, but I mean, you've had so many guys be able to pick up the slack for this team that's not even funny. And for Kennesaw, they just don't have the same three-point shooting as well. Sam Houston State, they shoot right around about 37 or so percent from three-point range. That is a top 50 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for this Kennesaw State, more around a country average mark from three-point range for them, as you've been able to get a lot of production out of RJ Johnson. He had to step in at the point guard spot with Simeon Cottle getting caught for the FBI probe. You've had Frank Juan Sherman give you about 10 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. Ramon Seals, he's been in and out of the lineup, but should be good to go here. He gives you about 4.5 boards. Brandon Skip-to-my-Lou is able to throw in there about 5.5 rebounds per game as well, but it is also a Kennesaw team that has been well outside the top 175 with regards to ball security. Neither here nor there in terms of being able to generate turnovers, and with this Kennesaw group, they've been very strong on the inside. They are 25th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but they are a team that's going to give it up a little bit more from three-point range. Right now, they are allowing teams to shoot 35% from three. That is outside the top 225 in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Sam Houston State, they're a top 70 team with this regard. So, a circumstance where with Kennesaw, I'm going to be willing to take 4.5 or more with them, 3.5 or less, willing to lay it with Sam Houston State, 159.5 or less, and on the over 160.5 or higher, the under 817, 818. You've got Charlotte versus UAB. This is for the Conference USA tournament, and right now with Charlotte, you're going to be getting them as a underdog of 4.5 points. And tonight's game, you're getting a 145.5 to a 146.5, and I did set my total at 142. I do like the under. Charlotte is one of the slowest teams in all of college basketball, 330th in terms of total possessions per game. Now, UAB is looking to move it. They are 54th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and I'm willing to lay it with UAB because this team is very trustworthy with the ball. No three-point shooting whatsoever. They shoot 28% from three. That's a bottom 5 mark in the country, but they know it. They're going to be looking to go down low. They're a top 20 team in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from inside the three-point line. They also don't allow you to get second and third chances. They're a top 50 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage. Charlotte, meanwhile, 286. They are allowing teams to grab over 30.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, and that affects a Charlotte team that has been a top 80 team with regards to their own offensive rebound percentage, and Charlotte is just simply not taking care of the ball. This team ranks about 276th in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and for UAB and their faults with their three-point shooting, second in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Now with UAB, you've been able to have Chance Westry do a really nice job in terms of supplying the team with about 15.5 points per game, but then around him, you've got so many guys that are doing a ton of rebounding. Daniel Rivera, Kyron Lindsay, they're up to combined about 13 rebounds per game. Evan Chapman has been able to give you about 9 points, 9 boards per contest, and then Jacob Meyer, he throws in there about 12.5 points per game as well. And then on the flip side, you've got a bunch in Charlotte that has been relying upon Ben Bradford to be the main scorer. He really doesn't pop it from three, but gives you about 13 points, throws in their steal per contest, and then the ancillary guys have been more of your three-point shooting. Damani Harrison, along with Arden Coyers, they combine to be able to give you about 17.5 points per game. They combine to shoot 38% from three. To say Mingo, 4.5 assists, 12 points per game. But with the Charlotte group, they're hovering right around about 200th with regards to opponent's two-point shooting percentage, just outside the top 225 in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and don't put you under duress. They're well outside the top 340 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. I think that for Charlotte, with their slow and controlled style, it's going to be able to keep this under, and I think that UAB pulls it out. I'm willing to lay up to 5.5 here with UAB, and I like the under. I set my total at a 142, 819, 820 on the card. This is the Conference USA tournament. North Texas and Tulsa do battle. Currently no numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I did set Tulsa as a favorite of 5 points. I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 with them, 5.5 or more to get the points with North Texas, and then made a total to where a 137.5 or less. I'm in on the over 138.5 or higher. The under, you've got a North Texas group that has been so supreme defensively in games played away from home. Top 15 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Top 5 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. And in a roadside score venue, teams are only shooting about 30.5% from three-point range against them. That's also a top 35 mark in the country. While you've got a Tulsa team that honestly has not been the world's worst team defensively. Games played away from home, teams are shooting about 32.5% from three against them. That's a top 75 mark in the country, but this team is much more applauded for their offense. They're a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. They shoot 39.7% from three-point range. That's a top 5 mark in the country. Now, they also do the little things really well. Top 25 team in terms of free throw shooting percentage if the game is on the line. And North Texas, they've been able to do a good job in terms of grabbing second and third chances. Top 50 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage, with Sean Stevenson being the main headliner for this offense. Pair of steals, pair of assists, 17 points per contest. And then from there, you've got some mixers and shakers down low. Dylan Arnett, Reese Robinson. These two guys combined for about 10.3 rebounds per game. Both give you about 7.5 points per game. David Terrell is able to give you 13.5 points per game, but just no three-point shooting here whatsoever. Team as collective, they shoot 30.3% from three-point range. That is a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball, and it gets even worse when they're away from home. In a roadside shoot-your-core venue, this is a North Texas team that they shoot from three-point range a nice hearty 25.6%. That is a bottom 5 mark in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Tulsa, you've got a trio of guys that have really been able to step up and give this team a whole bunch of offense. Miles Barnstable is up to about 15 points per game. He's shooting 42% from three. David Green shoots 40.5% from the outside, 16.5 points. And then Tylen Riley, he's been able to supply about 14.5 points per game. So I have to love what all these guys bring to the table. It's a Tulsa team that's been able to protect the ball, top 70 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 250 with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but do a relatively solid job guarding the outside. They're not the world's worst team on the inside as well. They're a top 55 team with their own 2-point shooting percentage, top 110 team in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and I do think that with their free throw shooting and doing the little things well, that's going to be able to win out, but I do think the North Texas is going to be able to hold things down with a Tulsa team that has been really prolific offensively, but not necessarily the most up-tempo team. 178th in terms of total possessions per game, so 137.5 or less in on the over, 138.5 or higher the under, and I'm willing to lay up to 4.5 here with Tulsa, 5.5 or more, taking those points with North Texas. Now we head out to the SEC tournament out there in Nashville, Tennessee. 821-822. It's Florida and Kentucky doing battle, and Kentucky finds themselves as a double-figure underdog here, as you're going to be catching with them between 11.5 and 10.5 points. 159.5 is the total, and I do like the under. I did set my total at a 157. Have a Florida team then has been so dominant with their defense down low and also not so great with their three-point shooting. Florida is about 31.2% from three-point range. That is outside the top 310 in all of college basketball. Really great on defense, though, 20th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Kentucky, they have left something to be desired on defense. 117th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Kentucky not playing as fast as they have in the past, about 136th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And well, this is a Florida team that, no doubt about it, they've got the advantage on the glass. Ruben Chinyelu, 11.5 rebounds, 11.5 points per game. Thomas Haw, he's able to give you about 8 boards. And one of the lone guys on the roster that shoots above 34% for three, as he's been able to give you about 14 points per game. And then Micah hand logged in when you need him. He's able to give you about 4 to 5 rebounds per game. It is a Kentucky team that has someone like a Mohamed Diabate who's able to give you 5 rebounds per game. Malachi Moreno throws in there 6.5 rebounds per game. Florida's number 1 in the country in terms of rebound percentage. You're not going to quite be able to match up with that, but it's not like Kentucky's chopped livery or anything like that. 46th in the country in terms of their rebound percentage, and then you've had Denzel Aberdeen along with Ortega Owe be able to step it up with regards to their outside shooting. With Aberdeen gives you 13 points, shoots 35% for three. Owe shoots about 34.5% from three, 18 points per game, and it's a Kentucky team that's doing a better job in terms of taking care of the ball. 10.5 turnovers per game, that's a top 90 mark in the country. Florida's outside the top 180 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, as Boogie Flank continues to shoot less than 25% from three. Has been playing much better here recently, though. He supplies the team with about 11.5 points, 3.5 assists per game, and then Xavion Lee, while 3-point shooting has not necessarily come along for the ride, he is giving you about 11.5 points, 4 boards, a steal, and about 4 assists per game. And in this spot with Kentucky, I do think that they're going to be able to do just enough to hold in there. Recognize that Florida is really good on the inside, being a top 15 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but they do find themselves outside the top 75 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Think that perimeter play just enough for Kentucky to hold in there. So set a total of 157. I like the under, and and I do like the points with Kentucky, made them a 9-point dog, 823, 824. Tennessee is going to be playing against Vanderbilt, and anchor down as Vanderbilt finds themselves in a tight line as a 1.5-point favorite in a lot of spots. Some places they're the 1-point underdog. Tennessee opened up as the favorite. Now they're becoming the underdog. Totals between 148 to 148.5, and I made Vanderbilt the 1.5-point favorite. Personally, hoping that they can be a little bit of an underdog, so that way I can take them on the money line. If not, I'll lay the 1 to 1.5 here with Vanderbilt. As for the Commodores, it certainly has been a little bit tumultuous with Frankie Collins being out of the fold, and they've been dealing with a few injuries in general, but I do think that this is a good matchup for them with a Tennessee team that has been outside the top 235 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They have Nate Amon back, whose man will give you 17.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game, and Jacoby Gillespie has been that main man, 18 points, 5.5 assists, 2 steals per contest, and this team is so great on the offensive glass. They lead the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage. They, though, are only about 33.8% from 3-point. Tennessee's still a solid defense. They're still a top 45 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but that has taken a little bit of a fall from past seasons. For Vanderbilt, they're a bit better on the glass than they were a season ago as well, as you've got Jalen Washington, who's been able to give you about 5 to 5.5 rebounds per game. You get about 7 rebounds and 10 points per game. Devin McLaughlin, and then you have the Tyler Nickel and Tyler Tanner. Tanner's your main man, 19 points, 2.5 assists, shoots 38% for 3, and then Nickel, he gives you about 14 points on 40% 3-point shooting. They dealt with Duke Miles being out of the lineup for about 8 games. He's now been able to return for this team at double figures in pretty much each of the last 3 games for this bunch, so should be all good to go here, and he's one of the main quarterbacks of the defense with 2.6 steals per contest for Vanderbilt. They are looking to play fast. They're a top 45 team in terms of total possessions per game, but they're still a rock-solid defense as well. They're a top 85 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Vanderbilt has been able to do a pretty solid job in terms of locking down from the outside. On the inside, it's a little bit more tumultuous for them. They are outside the top 75 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, but Vanderbilt does a great job taking care of the ball. Top 30 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. If it comes down to free throws, they shoot 78.3% at the charity stripe. That is a top 20 mark in the country, so do you think that that's just enough to get the job done? Tennessee strong on defense, so I set a total of 147.5. I like the under with Vanderbilt, whether they be a 1-point underdog or a 1-point favorite, willing to back them. 825, 826 on the card. It is Ole Miss, and they're going to be facing off against Alabama. Alabama does find themselves as a double-figure favorite here, as you're laying 10.5 points with them. 163.5 is the total, and I did set Alabama as a 12-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number with this Alabama group. They just are playing so up-tempo that it's not even funny in terms of total possessions per game. They are checking in the top 10 in all of college basketball, Mambo number 5 to be exact, and for this Ole Miss squad, it's one that has been very mid-tempoed all season long in terms of total possessions per game. These guys right around about 157th in the country, and the one thing that they do well is that they maximize possessions. For this Ole Miss team, they're 23rd in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and they've been able to get hot here in the SEC tournament. I just think that that's going to be lasting much longer. For Alabama, they're not going to generate any turnovers whatsoever. They're outside the top 355 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they do have a little bit of a problem on the glass. Both of these teams, as a matter of fact, have a problem on the glass. Mississippi, 259th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Alabama, they're not necessarily a whole heck of a lot better. They're actually even worse. They're allowing teams to grab about 30.7% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, 283rd in the country, but Alabama's actually been a surprisingly decent team in terms of not allowing good looks. They're a top 85 team with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage. They're allowing teams to shoot 33.3% for 3, while they themselves are a top 5 team in terms of percentage of the field goal attempts that come from 3-point range, and they're shooting about 36% for 3. Aiden Holloway gives you 17 points. He shoots 43.5% from 3-point range. LeBaron Filan continues to give you about 39% 3-point shooting, 21.5 points per contest. Amari Allen has been able to throw in there about 12 points, 7 rebounds per game. Neither of these teams really have dominant rebounders, as right now for Ole Miss, Malik Diaz, the lone guy in the roster, it gives you over 4.5 rebounds per game, and he's been able to give the team 14 points per game, so having Allen coupled with Aiden Sherrill has been able to give you 6 rebounds per game, should be able to give this Alabama team a nice little bit of an edge on the inside. Meanwhile, for Ole Miss, it's been a team that's been neither here nor there with their 3-point shooting. AJ Storr has been utilized in so many different roles, and right now gives you about 15 points on 35.5% 3-point shooting. Don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him night in, night out. Peyton Prinkins, he's been able to supply the team with about 9 points. He does shoot 42% from 3-point range, but it's also an Ole Miss team that is allowing teams to shoot over 34% from 3. They're just a hair outside the top 185 with that regard. They've been outside the top 140 with regards to opponent's 2-point shooting percentage, outside the top 150 in terms of generating turnovers, and with the way that they're just getting blasted down down low and on the glass. I do think that this Alabama team finds a way to be able to get the job done here. Set my line at 12, so I'm going to be willing to lay it with Alabama, and I do like this little over. I set my total at a 166, 827, 828 on the card. It is Arkansas, and they're going to be playing against Oklahoma, and Oklahoma does find themselves as a underdog on my line, as this game currently does not have numbers, as I set Oklahoma as a 5.5 point underdog. So willing to take 6+ with them, 5 or less willing to lay with Arkansas, and then made a total of a 163.5. 163 or less. I like the over. 164 or higher, the under. I have an Oklahoma team that has really been heating up with their offense. A relatively mid-tempo team, 169th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Arkansas is gunning it. They're 18th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Both teams do a great job in terms of taking care of the ball as well. Oklahoma, 46th in the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. Arkansas leads the country in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and though Oklahoma is very fragile down low, and really both of these teams are pretty fragile down low, you do have an Oklahoma team that's a top 100 team in terms of offensive rebound percentage. You've been able to get a lot out of Muhammad Wagyu, who's been able to give you about 7.6 rebounds per game, and then Tay Davis, 12.5 points, 5.5 boards, a little bit of a do-it-all dynamo. Nigel Pack, Xavier Brown, those are your main two guys in the backcourt. Pack packs it in at 45.5% three-point shooting, 16 points per game. Xavier Brown has been able to shoot about 15.5 points per game, shoots 37% from three and 88% at the free throw line, so he's been able to do a little bit of everything. Now, both of these defenses have been quite wretched, and if I were to say so myself, I would say that this Oklahoma defense has been far more wretched, as currently they are a nice hardy in terms of total points allowed on a per possession basis, 269th in the country, and then with Arkansas, they're about 192nd. Arkansas's biggest issue is down low, as they've actually been able to do an okay job in terms of guarding the three-point line. Teams only shoot about 31.5% from three against them. That's a top 50 mark in the country. Oklahoma can't say the same, 34.5%. That's about 211th in the country, and then with Arkansas, what you're going to be able to get out of Darius Acuff moving forward is a little bit TBD. I'd be surprised if he doesn't play in this game. He was held out towards the back half of the regular season. He's been able to give you about 22.6 assists per contest, and then Malik Thomas has been a nice number 2 for this team, as right now he's going bombs away, shooting from three-point range right in that neighborhood of about 42%, 15.5 points, 2.5 assists per game. Trevon Brazile has some versatility with about 13.7 boards. He shoots 35.5% per three. Do get some shot blocking out of Malik Ewan, but again, with Acuff not necessarily being 100%, that does hurt this Arkansas team a little bit, and I think they get a nice expose of offense here. 163 or less in on the over, 164 or higher the under. Willing to lay up to 5 with Arkansas, 6 or more. I'm going to be taking those points with Oklahoma. 829, 830 on the card. It is UMass, and they're going to be playing against Toledo, and Toledo does find themselves in the MAC tournament out there in Cleveland, Ohio, as a 2.5 to a 3.5 point favorite total on this game, 158.5. I did take the over. I set my total at 162.5. UMass is playing at warp speed, top 25 team in the nation in terms of total possessions per game, and UMass has a very nice edge on the glass with this UMass team. They're a top 100 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, top 75 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Neither of these teams are necessarily doing a great job in terms of guarding on the inside. Toledo's outside the top 320 in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage. UMass, they're right there at about 307th, and you do have to have some trepidation with the fact that UMass has had a tough time taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. That's the one thing that Toledo's been okay with on defense. They're a top 115 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but Leonardo Batille along with Marcus Banks Jr., these two guys have been very rock solid for this UMass team. They've been able to combine for in that neighborhood about 35 points per game, and Banks, he shoots 38.5% from three. Kajal Parker shoots 42% from the outside. Daniel Hankins Sanford has been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game as well. And then on the other side of things, you do have a Toledo team that has 2 really good scorers out there in the backcourt, as you've got Sonny Wilson along with Leroy Blyden Jr. combining for about 33.5 points per game. Both shoot 39.8% from three-point. And overall, it's a Toledo team that is a top 40 team with their three-point shooting percentage, top 75 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. UMass also a top 75 team with their own three-point shooting percentage, so should get a lot of points in this game. Austin Parks has been able to give you about 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. It's a Toledo team that, in terms of defense or rebound percentage, are well outside the top 275 in all of college basketball. And despite the fact that UMass is really bad at the free throw line, it's not going to hurt them too much here. Toledo does not put you to the free throw line. They're a top 20 team in terms of fewest free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis. They just give up a lot of clean looks, so I think that helps you out to the over. I say UMass is a 2.5 point dog. We'll take 3+ with them, and I do like the over. I set my total at a 162.5. 831, 832. It's Kent State. They're going to be playing against Akron. Akron does find themselves as a 6.5 to a 7 point favorite total on this game. 163.5 to 164.5. Made my total 165.5. I like the over. I have a Kent State team that's just absolutely gunning it, 13th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Akron, they're playing a little bit more slowly, but still, they're a super efficient offense that is playing very fast. Akron is 3rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, 65th in terms of total possessions per game, and I am going to be willing to lay with Akron. They're playing out there in Cleveland, Ohio, so it's a little bit of home court advantage for them. For Akron, they've been a rough three-point shooting defense, allowing teams to shoot 35.2% from three-point range. Kent State has been rough themselves. They're allowing teams to shoot 34.9% from three. Now, the one place where Kent State is going to have an advantage, they've been a top 85 team with regards to offensive rebound percentage, with Rocco Gillespie supplying 18 points, 11 rebounds per game. Sion Medley is able to give you about 6.5 assists per game, but it is a team that's been rough in terms of taking care of the ball. This Kent State team is well outside the top 290 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and Kent State is not the same three-point shooting team away from home. 39.5% is what they shoot from three-point range at home, 31.4% in a roadside shoot score venue. Meanwhile, Akron shoots 41.5% from three-point range at home. That goes to 37% away from home with Tavari Johnson shooting about 40% from three, 20-plus points per contest. You've had Armani Lyles throwing their 15.7 boards. He shoots 930s from three-point range. You've had Eric and Evan Mahaffey combined for about 18.5 points per game. They do a nice job in tandem, and then Morgan Safford on the flip side for Kent State is able to give you about 14 points, 5.5 rebounds per game. And for Kent State, they do have the best low post presence in this game, but they're still outside the top 140 in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. And with this Akron team, I do think that they're just way too complete on both their just interior play and their exterior play on offense, with them also being a top 15 team with regards to their two-point shooting percentage, and they're a top 75 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage as well. I think that that's going to be just enough to get the job done. Also top 100 team in terms of generating turnovers, so I want to lay it with Akron, set them as a 7.5 point favorite. I do like the over. I did set my total at a 165.5, 833, 834. St. John's and Seton Hall are going to be doing battle from MSG, and with Seton Hall, they are an underdog of 7.5 points. Totals between 132 to 133.5, and I did take the over. I set my total 135.5. Last time these two teams played, I believe you got 139 total points in that game. St. John's is looking to play at warp speed, 40th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Seton Hall is not. Seton Hall 292nd in terms of total possessions per game, and these are two great defenses. Seton Hall is 15th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. St. John's is 17th. Now, St. John's has been allowing some second and third chances in roadside shoot score games, and this is pretty much a home game for them. They are outside the top 150 in terms of defense and rebound percentage, and Seton Hall has one thing going for them on offense. They're a top 45 team in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound. St. John's is also in the top 45. And for St. John's, you've got Dylan Mitchell, who's been able to do a nice job giving you 7 rebounds per game. Zuby Ejiofor is just a do-it-all guy, and the fact that Mitchell and Ejiofor are your top two facilitators, that's not necessarily great for St. John's. Would like to see them get a little bit more out of someone like a Dylan Darling, perhaps Ian Jackson, but still, about 16.7 boards, 3.5 assists per contest out of him. And then you've had Isaiah Sellers along with Ian Jackson combined to shoot about 35.5% from three. These guys combined to give you about 20.5 points per game. St. John's not necessarily the world's greatest shooting team themselves. Both of these teams are. For Seton Hall, they're outside the top 285 with regards to their 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage. Meanwhile, for St. John's, they're outside the top 195 with their 2-point shooting percentage, country average team with their 3-point shooting percentage. But the second and third chances are going to add up. You've got a Seton Hall team that very much is masterminds of being able to generate turnovers, top 20 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but St. John's maximizes possessions, being a top 70 team with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. I think that pretty much in their home gym, that's going to be able to get the job done for them. So, set my line at 9.5. I'm willing to lay up to 9 here at St. John's, then like the over. Set my total 135.5, 835, 836 on the card. It is Georgetown, and they're going to be playing against Connecticut and UConn. In a lot of places, you're not seeing numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I set them as a 12.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 12 with them, 13 more. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Georgetown, then set a total to where a 136 or less. I'm in on the over, a 137 or higher, the under, as Georgetown has done a nice job in terms of maximizing possessions thus far this season. And frankly enough, right now I'm seeing an opener of UConn being a 13 point favorite with a total of 140.5. So I'm going to like that under and 13 plus here with Georgetown. As for the Hoyas, they're a top 85 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and been able to get a lot out of Vincent Iwuchukwu, guy that was dealing with injury towards the beginning part of the season. Since he's come back, he's given the team 12 points, 6 boards, a steal, a block per contest. He's also shooting about 37.5% from 3-point for a Georgetown team, which has been their main kryptonite. They're outside the top 270 with their 3-point shooting percentage. Not great inside as well, outside the top 230 with that regard. And for Georgetown, they have become a top 175 team with their rebound percentage. Julius Salafana has been able to give you about 9 points per game. And for UConn, things have been just a little bit disjointed for them recently, even though you got Alex Caravan, who's done a nice job giving you about 40% 3-point shooting, 13 points, 6 rebounds per game. Silas Emery does a little bit of everything, double-figure score, 5 boards, 5 assists, and it's a UConn team that has been able to do a relatively solid job on the glass, top 55 team with regards to their overall rebound percentage, or as a matter of fact, the top 25 team with their overall rebound percentage, and it's a UConn team that shot in Big East play over 38% from 3-point range. They're doing a pretty good job in terms of denying you inside as well. They're 9th in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but I have noticed that in terms terms of home and road splits, and for UConn, the crowd is very much going to be out at MSG. That's going to help them out quite a bit, but they do have some pretty demonstrative splits with their defense, as they are giving up about 40% two-point shooting percentage at home, 50% away from home, so that's been a little bit of an issue. You've got Solo Ball, who's only been able to shoot about 30 or so percent from three, but it still gives you about 14 points per game. UConn has been not generating the same amount of turnovers that they have in the past. Georgetown really not going to put you under duress either, but I do think that this is going to be a lower tempo game with UConn. They're about 277th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Georgetown is 229th, and while Georgetown may not be able to find a whole bunch of good opportunities, has been a Georgetown team that's been guarding the three-point line a little bit better, and I think that that's going to be able to keep them lively in this game. We'll take 13 plus here with Georgetown, and here at a 140.5, like the under semi-total 136.5. 837, 838. You've got Virginia, and they're going to be playing against Miami. Miami does find themselves as a mid-tier underdog here, and this is from the Spectrum Center out there in North Carolina, of 3.5 to 4.5 points. It's all a scheme between 143.5 to 144.5, with Virginia made them the 4.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with them. You've got a Virginia unit that has been so dominant on the glass. Top 10 team with regards to rebound percentage. They entered into the day on Thursday 7th, Miami 9th, but for Miami, they really do give it up from 3. Entered into yesterday, allowing teams to shoot over 35% from 3, turned 80th in the country, and for Virginia, I'm not saying that they light it up from 3, but they're a top 100 team shooting 35.5% from 3-point. Malik Thomas has been able to shoot about 34% from 3, 12 points, 4 boards per contest. Chance Mallory has been able to throw in there about 3.5 assists, 9.5 points per game for a Virginia team that is doing a lot of little things well. Not going to put you under duress. They're outside the top 240 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but they've got so many guys that give them second and third chances. Thaddeus Ritter, 16 points, 6 rebounds per game. They're a good shot blocking team with Jonah Grunlow, Okana, and Yesu combining for about 5 blocks per contest, and then on the other side of things, Malik Reneau has been that main man for Florida, as right now he is stuffing the stat sheet, giving you about 19 points, 6 boards, pair of assists, shoots 36.5% from 3. Drew Washington also shoots about 36.5% from 3. Trey Donaldson is up to about 6 assists per game. Miami, country average team in terms of taking care of the ball. They're just inside the top 100 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but the way that they give it up from 3-point range and the way that Virginia is able to match them on the glass is big, and if this is a tight game for Miami, they shoot just 68.1% at the free throw line. That's outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. Virginia, not great themselves at 71.8%, but a little bit more trustworthy, and I do think that for Virginia, they do get the job done in a game that should have some late game following. So I did set a total of a 144.5 here at the 143.5. I'd like the over, and a willing to lay up to 4 with Virginia. 839, 840 on the card. Clemson and Duke are going to be doing battle. No numbers currently up on this game, but I've got my handicap. I said Duke is a 10.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 10 with them, 11 or more. I'm going to be taking the points with Clemson, and with the total 134 or less, I'm going to be in on the over. 135 or higher. I do like the under. We'll see if we can get an opener on this game, because with this Clemson team, they are a little bit banged up now that Carter Welling is going to be out for the remainder of the season, but it's still very much a whole is greater than some of its parts approach with them, as RJ Godfrey is now your main man down low with about 11.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but then you've got pretty much 5 different guys that give you between 6 and 9.5 points per game. Ephraim Johnson has been one of those main 3-point shooters at 36%. Nick Davidson is able to give you about 9 points, 4 rebounds per game. And for Clemson, they do a really nice job on the glass, despite the fact that you don't have a single guy that really gives you over 5.5 rebounds per game. For Clemson, they've been a whole-hum sort of offensive team, but they're a top 35 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They are a top 30 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage away from them. And Duke, they had a tough go of it in their first game without Patrick Ngangba, along with Caleb Foster. They've been without Ngangba for a few games, but having Foster out, he's really one of the main point guards for the team. That's an issue, and Duke entered into yesterday number 1 in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Gave up over 80 to Florida State, so that's a bit of an issue. Now you've got Cameron Boozer, 22.5 points, 10.5 boards, 4 assists, shoots 40% from 3. He's amazing. Isaiah Evans is able to throw in there about 14.5 points per game as well, and then you've got Caden Boozer, who should be seeing more minutes moving forward. He's been able to give you about 3 assists per contest, but do I have to have some concerns for this Duke team that is a little bit banged up going up against a Clemson team that's going to be very content to slow things down. In terms of total possessions per game, about 327th in all of college basketball. Duke, they entered into yesterday being a relatively low-tempo team themselves at about 266th, and I do think that both of these teams are going to be impacted by injuries, but I do think that Clemson does just enough to be able to hold within this game. 10 or less willing to lay with Duke, 11 or more, taking the points with Clemson, and then 134 or less in on the over, 135 or higher, the under. 841, 842, Iowa State, they're going to be playing against Arizona. This is out there for the Big 12 tournament, and right now for Arizona, Arizona. They do find themselves as 3.5 to 4.5 point favorites. 143 to 144 is the total. I'm laying it with Arizona. I did set them as a 6.5 point favorite. Now, Iowa State is one of the most balanced teams in all of college basketball. They're a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, entered into yesterday third in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. But that said, this is an Iowa State team that is not going to be able to win the battle down low. Arizona is a team that has just been able to dominate on the boards, a top 10 team with regards to overall rebound percentage. Now, for Iowa State, they're a top 35 team themselves. Joshua Jefferson, he's been able to give you 7 plus boards, 5 assists, 14 plus points per game, and you've been able to have Milan Memiselovic be an incredible three-point shooter at about 50% from three. And Arizona can be at a little bit more from the outside. They are outside the top 50 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, second in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, top 60 team with their own two-point shooting percentage, and their top 10 team with regards to rebound percentage. I just don't think that Arizona is going to lose the battle down low with having Toby Owaka along with Monte Uvas Kurivas combined for about 17.7 rebounds per game. Braden Burries has been one of the most improved players in all of college basketball as well. 16.5 rebounds per game. Last time these two teams played on Big Monday, it was an absolute shellacking, and I don't think it's going to be quite that. Getting Koa Pete back is also big for Arizona, though. He's been able to give you about 14 points per game, and with this bunch in Arizona, they're not necessarily a team that's going to generate a ton of turnovers, where the bread is buttered for Iowa State is being a team that is in the top 10 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, as Tamon Lipsby, sort of the quarterback of the defense, 13 points, 5 assists, gives you about 2.5 rebounds per game, even though he doesn't really shoot it well from three-point range. And then Jamarian Bateman has been able to slip up, shoot about 38.5% from three-point range. But if the game is relatively tight and Arizona's not afraid to get physical, this is a Iowa State team that shoots 67.7% of the free throw line. That is outside the top 320 in all of college basketball. Not that Arizona's amazing, but they shoot 74% of the free throw line. That's the top 150 mark. So to make Arizona the 6.5 point favorite, I'm going to be willing to lay maybe my total 144.5. So 144 or less. I think that comes down to Lake Fells, like the over as well in Arizona, top 50 team in terms of total possessions per game. 843, 844. You've got Kansas doing battle with Houston. Right now, a lot of places do not have numbers up on this game. We're trying to check for a little bit of a handicap, and right now I'm seeing Houston as a 4.5 point favorite with a total of a 136.5. And I said Kansas as a 5.5 point underdog, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 4.5 here with Houston. Houston has been a team that's been incredible with their defense. They continue to be a top 5 team. There's points allowed on a per possession basis, and you're not going to get a lot of tempo in this game. Houston 321st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Kansas more of a mid-tempo team, 185th in terms of total possessions per game, and Kansas is just not allowing good looks in general. In terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, they're 8th in all of college basketball. Now, the one thing that they don't do is generate turnovers, which that's actually not the world's greatest thing for Houston, because they pride themselves on taking care of the ball. They've been a top 5 team all season long in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but for Kansas, they're a team that has been very reliant upon Flory Banunga to be able to jam things up down low, and he's been able to give you 2.5 blocks per game, and Houston is outside the top 125 with regards to their defensive rebound percentage, but they should be able to manhandle on glass, get some second and third chances. What helps out Kansas as well is that Emmanuel Sharp, along with Kingston Flemings, they've been able to combine for 32 points per game, shooting the high 30s from 3, and Kansas is allowing teams to shoot just 29% from 3-point. That's a top 5 mark in the country, and specifically a roadside shoot score venue. Houston, they allow you to shoot closer to about 32% from 3-point, but Chris Senek, Joseph Tugler have been able to combine for about 13 rebounds per game, and Tugler is able to give you a block and a half per game to be able to match things down low. And for Kansas, they just have been a little bit disjointed with Darren Peterson playing a full allotment of minutes. Gives you 20 points, he shoots 39% from 3, 4 boards per contest, but just feels like it's been a little bit wobbly to say the least. It's thrown off the dynamic of this team. You do have Bryson Tiller, I like down low, 8.6 rebounds per game, and then on the flip side, I just think that you have the best guard on the other end for Houston, a guy in Michael Suzanne, who in conference play has been shooting over 40% from 3, 14 points, 4 assists per game. He just is able to steady things for this Houston team. A Houston team that if they're in a tight spot, they shoot 77.1% of the free throw line. That is a top 35 mark in the country. Recognize that this is a squad that hasn't necessarily been the world's greatest with their overall shooting, but have a Kansas team that's right around about 175th with their 2-point shooting percentage, shooting about 35.5% from 3. That's right around about 100th in all of college basketball. So I do think that for Houston, they do just enough here to be able to get the job done. Semi-total of 133.5. So right now we're seeing that initial opener more around about 136.5, like the under to go along with Houston, laying the 4.5 to set them as a 5.5 point favorite. 845, 846 on the card. It is UT Arlington, and they're going to be playing against Utah Valley. Utah Valley opens up as a favorite of between 6.5 to 7.5 points, and total you're going to be getting this at a 135.5 in some spots. I'm seeing as low as a 133, and either way I'm going to be in on the over. I did set my total at a 130. 135. So as long as we can be below a 135.5, so 134.5 or less, I'm going to be liking the over. These openers are coming in just as I'm doing this, but that said, with Utah Valley, they've been able to do just a little bit of everything. They're a fast but not a warp speed team. In terms of total possessions per game, 85th in the country. Arlington is well outside the top 225, and Arlington actually leads the country in opponents' three-point shooting percentage at 26%, but for Utah Valley, they're looking to pile drive the ball down low. They're a top 45 team in terms of percentage of their field goal attempts that come from inside the three-point line, top 35 team with regards to their own two-point shooting percentage. Now Arlington also a top 125 team in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage, but with the way that this Utah Valley team is a top 45 team with regards to rebound percentage, with everyone just working in tandem, I think that that's going to be big. Arlington and Utah Valley both outside the top 335 in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and both are top 100 teams in terms of generating turnovers, but Utah Valley is the better of the two. They're a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, and they've got the best three-point shooter in this game, and Tyler Hendricks, who's able to give you 12 points, shoots 44% for three. Jackson Olcombe throws in there 15.5 points, 3.5 assists, 7 rebounds per game. Trayvon Leonard at the point guard spot, 6 assists, 12.5 points per contest. So I really like what these guys are able to bring to the table. And then on the flip side, for this UT Arlington bunch, you've been able to get quite a bit of production out of Rayshawn Sylvester down low, 12.6 half rebounds per game, and Marcel McCreary. He's like the lone guy on the roster that shoots above 32% from three, 12.5 points, shoots 82.5% of the free throw line, 33% from three, and that's a little bit of a concern as well. Arlington is outside the top 200 with regards to their free throw shooting percentage, and they are going to be very willing to put you on the free throw line as well. Do you think that Utah Valley going to do a nice job on the inside, win the turnover battle, and get the job done here? So 134.5 or less, I'm going to be in on the over, and with Utah Valley, 108, set them as a 9-point favorite. 847, 848. You've got Utah Tech, and they're going to be playing against Cal Baptist. This game currently does not have numbers, but I've got my handicap. Set Utah Tech as a underdog of 6 points. I'm willing to take 6.5 plus with Utah Tech, 5.5 or less. Willing to lay with Cal Baptist. Made a total to where 135.5 or less. I like the over, 136.5 or higher. The under. You got a pair of teams that are looking to play somewhat slow, but I mean, it's not going to be like a super slog of a game. Utah Tech is about 144th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Cal Baptist is 214th, and for Cal Baptist, this has been a really good three-point shooting defense. 5th in the country. Teams shoot 29.4% from three-pointers against them. Utah Tech, 13th. 30.1% is what opponents shoot from three-pointers against them. But Cal Baptist looking to pile drive the ball down low, even with Dominique Daniels, give you about 22 points per game. You've got Martell Williams, how he does is give you about 13 points, right around about 5 rebounds per game. But I mean, for Cal Baptist, this is a top 30 team with regards to rebound percentage. And for Utah Tech, they're outside the top 3 with regards to defensive rebound percentage. They give up a lot of second and third chances, even with Noah Belonga being able to give you 12.6 rebounds per game. You've been able to get a lot of Ethan Powder. He's come over from Utah Tech, over 15 points, 7 rebounds per game. But that said, I do think that they're going to have some massive issues on the inside. They're about 254th in the country in terms of opponents' two-point shooting percentage. Cal Baptist, they're not allowing those good looks on the inside. They are 31st in all of college basketball. And Deshaun Holt has been a nice three-point shooter for Utah Tech. He gives you 10 plus points per contest, shoots over 40% from three-pointers. But it's a Utah Tech team that they do rely upon that interior offense. They're a top 85 team with their two-point shooting percentage. Country average shooting about 34.5% from three-pointers, but also outside the top 230 in terms of ball security. Cal Baptist has been outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis themselves, and you've been able to get quite a bit out of Chance Trujillo as well, with about 12.5 points per game. But for Cal Baptist, a lot of their guys that have stepped up are not necessarily big-time scorers. You take a look at someone like a Brady Henjai, who's saying 7 feet tall, Thomas Ndonga. These two guys combine for 10 points per contest, but they combine for 12 rebounds per game. Jonathan Grimman has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. This team does a very good job in terms of locking it down on the inside. In a pressure spot, they only shoot about 71.5% of the free throw line, but I think that the defense gets the job done here for Cal Baptist. 1 to lay up to 5.5 with Cal Baptist, 6.5 or more. Take the points with Utah Tech, and then 135.5 or less. In on the over, 136.5 or higher. The under, 849, 850 on the card. Cal St. Northridge, J.K. CSUN. They take on UC Irvine out here in Nevada for the Big West Tournament, and right now with CSUN, they are an underdog of 3.5 to 4 points. So on this game, 148 to 149. Set a total of 145. I like the under. Now you've got a CSUN team that's playing at warp speed. No Bonaventure in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. Irvine not trying to run either. 52nd in terms of total possessions per game, but Irvine is so good down low. They lead the country in opponents' two-point shooting percentage. CSUN more of a country average team here now. Cal State Northridge has been very good in terms of not allowing second and third chances, and they should be able to get some second and third chances on the glass against Irvine. Northridge, they're line teams would grab only about 24% of their misses as an offensive rebound, top 30 mark in the country. Irvine, in games played away from home, teams do grab about 32.4% of their misses as an offensive rebound, but part of that is because they're one of the better shot blocking teams that you're going to find in all of college basketball as well, as they're getting about 3.4 blocks per contest out of Kyle Evans, who supplies 12 points, 8.5 rebounds per game. That actually leads to offensive rebounds. And then you've been able to have Jurion Dixon lead the offense with about 16 points. He shoots 39% from 3-point. Andre 3000 Henry has been supplying the team with about 10 points per contest as well. Darren Sarin throws in there 11 points per game. So you've got really good balance here. And then for CSUN, you've got a guy that has a little bit of a pedigree from the NBA level. And Larry Hughes Jr. has been shooting 40% from 3-point. He's up to about 17.5 points per game. You've been able to get a lot down low out of Muhammad Fofana. He's been able to give you 11.5 points, 8 rebounds per game. Joshua Garrow throws in their 9 boards. And you do have Josiah Davis give you about 7.5 assists per game. But sloppiness is here with CSUN. They're outside the top 275 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. It's an Irvine team that they themselves have been hovering right around about 300th in terms of ball security. But Irvine has also been a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Northridge is not quite at that level. And if Northridge needs to go to the free throw line, they shoot 66.4% the free throw line. That is the bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. Irvine, not a lot better, but a little bit better at 68.5%. I did set Irvine here as a 3-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take 3.5 plus here with Northridge because you do have an Irvine team that has been sloppy with the ball on offense, and I think that this is going to be a defense-oriented game. So we'll take 3.5 plus here with Northridge, and I'm going to be in on this total under as well. 851, 852 on the card. Do I have to do this a little bit blind as Hawaii is going to be taking on the winner of this Cal State Fullerton game, and I am lining up Cal State Fullerton as of right now. And if it is Fullerton versus Hawaii, I did set them being Hawaii as a 6.5 point favorite. We'll be willing to lay up to 6 with Hawaii, 7 or more. Take the points with Fullerton. Made a total of a 156.5. So 156 or less in on the over, 157 or higher the under, and Fullerton, as I'm doing this, up double figures on UC Davis. If it were to be UC Davis, I'd probably be setting them as closer to a 7-point underdog and a closer to 152-ish total, depending upon what happens here in the late session on Thursday, but that's it for Fullerton. This has been a team that's been able to do a really good job on the turnover front end. I mean, they become a respectable defense. They're a top 225 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now, for lack of a better term, they gamble for turnovers because they are 348th in the country in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but it's a Hawaii team that turns the ball over a ton. Hawaii's outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, and that's where the bread is buttered for this Fullerton team. They are 39th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Hawaii country average team here, but Hawaii has been doing such a great job on the defensive side of things. They're a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, top 50 in terms of opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage, and it's a Fullerton team that is not going to grab a lot of second and third chances. They're outside the top 3 in terms of percentage of their missed shots that result in an offensive rebound, though you do have 3 of guys, Jefferson De La Cruz, Menegro, Josh Ward, Landon Seaman out there in the backcourt that they've been able to do a nice job combining for about 42 points per game. With Seaman, he's your top 3-point shooter at about 38%. You've got Christian Williams now shooting 37% from 3 for a Fullerton team that shoots about 34.5% from 3-point. That's a country average mark, the country average with their 2-point shooting percentage, but again, just not giving themselves second and third chances to be able to accelerate upon. And then for Hawaii, you've had Yetis Numishka take a little bit of a step back with regards to his scoring, but has done a lot of mixing and shaking for this team. 9.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. Harry Ruyadev is that top 3-point shooter as he's been able to go bounce away for 40% from 3, 10.5 points per game. Isaac Johnson is a true 7-footer that just does it all for the team. Shoots 88% the free throw line at 7 feet tall, 13.5 points, 6 boards, shoots 33% from 3. Quandre 3000 Bullock has been able to give you about 6 rebounds per game. Do think that Hawaii should have a nice edge here, especially with the way that they are just not allowing clean looks in general on defense, and they've been able to dominate the glass. So with Hawaii, I'm going to be willing to lay up to 6 with them, 7 or more, taking the points with Fullerton. 156 or less like the over. It's Fullerton, a top 10 team in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and then 157 or higher, the under. 853, 854. It is Nevada and Utah State doing battle out here in lovely Las Vegas. Right now with Utah State, you're finding them as a favorite of 6 to 6.5 points. Totals between 144.5 to 145.5, and I like the under. I did set my total at a 144. Have a Nevada team that's not playing at a very aggressive pace whatsoever. 258th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, and Utah State about 195th in terms of total possessions per game. Utah State has been masterful in terms of generating turnovers. The games played away from home, they are currently a top 5 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, while Nevada is a top 55 team in terms of taking care of the ball. So strength on strength there. Utah State has been strong with regards to their interior offense. They're a top 10 team with their 2-point shooting percentage. Nevada's outside the top 300 there, but Nevada, in games played away from them, they do shoot over 36% from 3-point, and that's where this Utah State team can become undone. They're outside the top 175 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but they do have the firepower of Mason Fazlov along with MJ Collins. Collins, 17.5 points. He's waned a little bit with his scoring here in the back half of the season, but Fazlov does a little bit of everything with 2 steals. He shoots about 42% from 3. Kobe King has been the king of shooting 40% from the outside. And then Gary Clark has been a nice mixer and shaker. 7 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. Shoots over 70% on his 2-point shots. Flip side, you've got a Nevada team that has Corey Camper. He's done a nice job leading the way with about 17 points, 4.5 boards, 2.5 assists. He shoots 40% from 3 points. Shayshawn Comer shoots 36.5% from the outside. Von Weems has been able to shoot 46% from 3 points. And for Nevada, they are masters at getting to the free throw line. A top 10 team. Matter of fact, a top 5 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. They do shoot 75% of the free throw line to be able to offset some of their woes on the inside, and it's a Utah State team that will put you at the free throw line. They're outside the top 240 in terms of free throw attempts allowed on a per possession basis, so I do think that that's going to be big here, but I do think that Utah State going to be able to come up with some turnovers, and with how strong Utah State is on the inside, I think that that's going to be big, but with Utah State, do keep in mind that if they're in a pressure spot, they only shoot about 70.9% at the free throw line outside the top 230 with that regard, and that's a big reason why I could only set my number at 6. So 6.5 plus taking the points with Nevada. And I do like the under, set my total at a 144. I have to do this one without numbers 855, 856. Last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. New Mexico and San Diego State to battle. I said New Mexico is 1-point favorite. So if they're a money line underdog, I'll take them. If I'm getting anything above a point with San Diego State, going to look at San Diego State, set a total of a 147. So 146.5 or less in on the over, 147.5 or higher. The under, you've got a New Mexico team that's been really good in terms of generating turnovers, a top 50 team with that regard. And in games played away from them, teams shoot less than 30% from 3 against them. That's a top 20 mark in the country. Not too bad on the defensive glass as well. They're a top 100 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Meanwhile, you've got a San Diego State team that has Magoon Gwath back, who's able to give you a block and a half per contest. As Rocco Miller was saying, though, it feels like a little bit of a disjointed team. In games played away from them, they're allowing teams to grab about 32% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. And I would say that the top player in this game belongs to New Mexico, as you've had Jake Hall do a nice job giving you about 16.5 points per contest. From 3-point, she's shooting about 44% from the outside. Tomaslav Bujan, 12 points, right around about 10 rebounds per game. JT Rock hasn't necessarily given you a ton, but I mean, he's been able to give you about a block per contest. Dayton Albury is a guy that's able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Now, this New Mexico team is going to be out on the inside. They're outside the top 235 with regards to opponents' shoot-point shooting percentage, but it's also a New Mexico team that has done a nice job taking care of the ball themselves. Top 120 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, and San Diego State has become a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. You've got a San Diego State team that has been really good with their interior defense. Top 40 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, more on country average with opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. Just so you're inside the top 100 from 3-point range as well with 3-6 and Waters give you about 13 points per game. He shoots 36% from 3, and then BJ turned it up. Davis is a 40% 3-point shooter with about 11 points per game. Both Davis and Waters shoot above 87% of the free throw line for a San Diego State team that has been shooting about 75% of the free throw line. That's the top 100 mark in the country. New Mexico, they shoot more like 73.5% at the free throw line. In New Mexico, they don't put you on the free throw line a ton. They're about country average with that regard. San Diego State is a team that's willing to put you on the charity stripe, and San Diego State has overall been a top 100 team in terms of total possessions per game, but that was a little bit of a warped set. They have that triple overtime game against Boise State, the double overtime game against Troy, and if you take into account just possessions per 40 minutes, just a hair outside the top 100 with that regard. So I just had a total year of where a 146.5 or less. I like the over 147.5 or higher, the under for New Mexico. We'll take them as a money line underdog on the money line, and with San Diego State, any sort of points, 1.5 plus, going to be looking at them. And now we hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-521, 306-522, the SWAC tournament, as you've got Prairie View, and they're going to be taking on Alabama A&M. A&M is an underdog of 1.5 points, totals between 142.5 to 143.5, and with A&M, I did set them as an underdog of 3 points. I'm going to be willing to take Prairie View. Prairie View is looking to play at warp speed, top 20 team in terms of total possessions per game. Alabama A&M, they are not looking to play at warp speed, as they have been well outside the top 225 in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Not too bad on the defensive glass, top 150 team in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Prairie View always gets dump trucked on the glass. They're outside the top 3 once again with regards to rebound percentage, and Teron Joseph, their top scorer to begin the season, went down, but they've had Mr. Dante Horn be able to go around the horn with 20 points per contest. He has been rock solid, and they've been able to get Joseph back to be able to give you a little bit of production. Very, very limited here in the SWAC tournament, but they do have him as, for lack of a better term, a little bit of a decoy that frees up Lance Williams Williams, who's been able to shoot 40% from 3, 10 points per game at Prairie View. They've been absolutely dominant on the turnover front. They're a top 30 team with regards to turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, Alabama A&M outside the top 125 with that regard. Alabama A&M, country average team in terms of taking care of the ball. And then you do have Contavious Dozier, who's come over from Grambling to be able to give you 15 points per game. He came over with his coach in Dante Jackson, who also brought with him James Graham, who's been able to give you about 10 points, 4 rebounds per game. Sammy Pacisis has been a little bit of a do-it-all dynamo, 10.5 points, 3.8 assists per game, but his team is just not strong in terms of executing on the inside, which is where you can really hurt this Prairie View team. For Alabama A&M, outside the top 3 with regards to their 2-point shooting percentage, to their credit, they get to the free throw line, and Prairie View will put you on the free throw line, and they shoot 74.6% at the charity stripe, so that's a big helper. But that said, when it comes to this Prairie View team, they themselves do a nice job getting to the free throw line. They shoot 75.5% at the charity stripe. That's a top 85 mark in the country. I think that wins out here. So Prairie View is a 3-point favorite, so we'll want to lay the small 1.5 with them. I do think that this is close enough for late fells, so my total 145, so I like the over. 306.523, 306.524. Southern is going to be taking on Florida A&M, and Florida A&M does find themselves as a underdog here of 2.5 points, and your total on this game, it is anywhere between 144.5 to 145.5, and I did set a total of a 146.5. I do like the over. Now, for Florida A&M, their games involve a whole bunch of turnovers, as this team is a top 75 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Unfortunately for them, they are well outside the top 340 in terms of ball security as well. It's gotten a little bit better as the season has went along, but that's been less than tremendous, to say the least. And on the flip side, you got a Southern team that maybe isn't generating the same amount of turnovers that they have in the past, but they're still really good with this regard. In terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, Southern checks in 56th in all of college basketball. And for Southern, you had Michael Jacobs be the main scorer for this team during the regular season with about 17 points per game. We've seen that creep down a little bit as the season has went along, but Malik Ashwald should be able to win the battle down low for this team. He's been able to give this team about 11.5 points, 6.5 rebounds per game. They were dealing with an injury towards the middle part of the season to Cam Ambroy. He's come in, given the team 3.5 assists, 9.5 points per contest, and he shoots about 36% from 3. Southern country average team shooting about 34.5% from 3. They don't really fight for second and third chances, but have been a top 225 team with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, and this is just a Florida A&M team that's not very strong down low. It has gotten much better. They had out for non-conference play their main rebounder, Micah Octave, 10 points, 8 rebounds, pair of assists. He's been able to help the team out, but for Florida A&M, they are well outside the top 275 with their own 2-point shooting percentage. They only shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range as well, which really didn't get a whole heck of a lot better in conference play. And when they go to the free throw line, they only shoot 69% at the charity stripe. Both of these teams are going to very much put you at the free throw line, but I do think that the 15 turnovers per game for Florida A&M is going to be costly, even though Jaquan Sanders, Tyler Shirley, these guys have surely been able to give you combined about 23.5 points per game. I do think that Southern Indiana finds a way to be able to get the job done and get this game cranked up tempo. For Southern, in terms of total possessions per game, they do find themselves right around about 26th in all of college basketball. Florida A&M, they're playing fast. They're not necessarily playing warp speed fast in terms of total possessions per game, more in that neighborhood of about 91st. So, do like the oversub by total at a 146.5, and one to lay up to 4 with Southern. 306.525, 306.526. South Carolina State, they're going to be playing against Howard. Howard finds themselves as a favorite of 14.5 points total on this game, 145.5 to 146.5. Like the under, semi-total at a 143.5. Howard is playing at a brisk pace, not necessarily breakneck, 108th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. South Carolina State is 129th. South Carolina State has been able to get absolutely nothing going on offense or on defense. They're a bottom 5 team in terms of defense rebound percentage, and games played away from them. Teams grab 39.5% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. They're 347th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. You get a little bit of 3-point shooting out of this team, but that said, even though you've got a guy like an Owen Bronson who's able to shoot about 35% for 3 throws in there, about 11 points per contest, you've got a Howard team that's been absolutely shutting that down. Teams are shooting less than 30% for 3 points against them. That's a top 20 mark in all of college basketball. Howard, they themselves shoot 35% from 3 points, really accelerated that in conference play with gaining back Cedric Taylor, who missed the first 11 or so games of the season. He and Bryce Harris both give you 17.5 points per game, both give you 6.7 rebounds per game between the two of them, 6 assists per game. Now, Howard has had a little bit of a tough time in terms of taking care of the ball. They're outside the top 320 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. South Carolina State, to their credit, top 100 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis, but Howard, top 25 team in terms of free throw attempts on a per possession basis. They shoot about 73% the charity stripe, with Cam Gillis being able to give you 10 points per game. And for as bad as the Howard, shall we say, ball control issues are, South Carolina State, 14.5 turnovers per game. That's a bottom 30 mark in all of college basketball. Jaden Johnson has been your main scorer with 13 points. Does shoot 35% from 3, but don't have a ton down low. Have 2 guys on the roster that give you over 3.1 rebounds per game. Cameron Clark, Christopher Parker, both give you only 5.1 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, you've got a guy like a Cam Gillis for this Howard team, give you about 10 points, 4.5 assists per contest. And with the way that Howard has become a top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, do think that they keep it under and get the job done. Willing to lay up to 16 with Howard. And I like the under, so my total 143.5. Wrap things up with 306.527, 5-37, 306, 528. Delaware State is going to be playing against NC Central. This is out there in the Spike tournament. Opener here is a total of a 135 with NC Central being a 4-point favorite. So that NC Central is a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. NC Central has been able to do one thing very well. Generate turnovers. 32nd in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Not great on offense. 322nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But guess who's worse? Delaware State. 365 out of 365 Division I teams in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Now Delaware State, a top 35 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. Boy, do both of these teams gamble for turnovers. So both of these teams outside the top 275 with regards to opponents' 2-point and 3-point shooting percentage when they don't gather those turnovers. For Delaware State, you've got the Ponce James, 13.5 points, shoots only about 32.5% for three, but better than the team's average of 29.7% from three-point range. And then Miles Webb has been able to be a nice helper for this team. He supplies about 9.5 points, throws in there actually about 40% three-point shooting, albeit on low volume, throws in there about 6 rebounds per game. He is the lone guy on the roster right now that gives you over 4 rebounds per game. And for this North Carolina Central team, certainly it's been rough for them on the glass as well. But that said, you've got a nice go-to point guard that does a nice job in terms of just getting everyone involved in Dante Johnson. 8 points, 4 boards, 5 assists per game. And then Gage Lattimore, 17 points per game. Now, they've been dealing with an injury to their number 2 scorer, Corey Carvey. So Lattimore is a lone guy on the roster averaging double figures right now, but shoots 39% from 3. Jay Slack has been picking up the slack recently. He gives you about 8.5 points. He shoots 36% from 3-point range with NC Central. They have been a team that has been outside the top 275 in terms of ball security. Delaware State, though, they're well outside the top 300 with this NC Central team. They shoot a respectable 33 or so percent from 3-point range. It doesn't sound like much. Both of these teams outside the top 275 in terms of points per possession, with both of these teams actually outside the top 320 with that regard, but do think that NC Central a little bit better in terms of taking care of the ball, a little bit better with their outside shooting, and they're actually a better team in terms of being able to guard the 3-point line themselves. So with NC Central, I do think that they get the job done. I'm willing to lay with them. Set them as a 6-point favorite, like the under, sub by total 132, and that'll wrap things up for the Friday edition of Coast to Coast Soup Sound, part of the VSiN Family Podcast. A big thanks to Rocco Miller, Racketeer.org, for joining me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Soups, you're able to subscribe wherever you hear podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So, per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day on this podcast with picks and analysis on every game, every day. So, I'll be back with you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much.